Leo finished the song, ended the video call, and walked off the stage. He headed back up to the second floor, the reset button in his mind already pushed. Down below, the crowd snapped back to reality, realizing the singer was gone. Thankfully, someone had recorded it. Those who hadn't felt like they'd been gently lowered to earth inside a warm, shimmering soap bubble, only to have it pricked by the needle of reality. The warmth vanished. The air was cold again, the wind just as sharp. There was no hearth, no lingering smoke. If it weren't for the residual heat in their chests and the dazed looks on the faces around them, they would have thought it was all just a fleeting dream. Leo sat back down at their table, only to find everyone staring at him. "What's with the looks? I just want to make a video call to Stella," he said. Jordan shook his head. "No, you didn't just make a video call. You went up there and performed a rain dance. Didn't you notice half the people in here look like they've been crying?" Ryan Hahn was speechless, his eyes wide. The song had completely mesmerized him. He had a sudden, overwhelming urge to buy a plane ticket, to see the American South for himself. Just listening to that song made it feel like a pilgrimage everyone had to make at least once in their lives. To see those old colonial houses with their slate roofs and covered porches, to walk on cobblestone streets. "Leo, man, you should seriously think about becoming a star," Ryan said, his voice brimming with excitement. "Aren't there singing competitions? You should enter one. You'd win for sure. I'd vote for you every day." Connor Brighton just listened, thinking to himself, this is why we can't take you anywhere. Ask a guy from a family like that to enter a singing contest? For them, this was just for fun. Besides, with those kinds of shows, the winner was probably picked before the first audition. Still, Leo's talent was undeniable. A gift from the heavens. For a split second there, Connor had even started to question his own sexuality. True beauty didn't need a face. You could fall in love with the voice alone. Here was a guy with a better background, better looks, and more talent than you. Yet he was completely oblivious to it all. And he'd gone on stage just to sing for his girlfriend on a video call. It was so earnest it was almost painful. Leo had barely settled in his seat when the system's familiar chime echoed in his mind. "Congratulations, host. Significant progress has been made with 18-karat gold tier single woman, Shelly Shun. Affinity has reached 80, attribute point +1. Your voice brought her peace, liberating her from a state of emotional turmoil. Her feelings for you are now stronger than a lover's. She is willing to support and accompany you unconditionally. Please continue your efforts and strive for greater heights. Congratulations, host. Exceptional progress has been made with gold tier single girl, Audrey Sia. Affinity has reached 80, attribute point +1. Your talent has captivated her innocent heart. She has developed feelings of idol-like worship for you and is determined to learn from you and follow in your footsteps. Please continue your efforts and strive for greater heights. Congratulations, host. Exceptional progress has been made with unlimited potential silver tier single man, Sean Riley. Affinity has reached 93, lifespan point +1. His feelings for you are complex yet sincere. You can always trust him with your back. He will never betray you. His affinity for you is higher than his affinity for himself. Please continue your efforts and strive for greater heights. Leo blinked. Was the song really that powerful? He'd been focused, sure, completely lost in the moment. It had felt effortless, natural, but he had no idea what it was like for everyone else. When he was that deep in his own, he couldn't look at the audience. That would just make him nervous. He kept his eyes on Stella on the screen, and before he knew it, the song was over. The table was still quiet, everyone savoring the afterglow, reluctant to speak too loudly and break the spell. Leo, however, was busy examining his attribute panel. It had a new, shimmering gold border, and the stats were neatly aligned, which satisfied his inner perfectionist. Stamina, 8, plus or -1/10. Endurance, speed, strength, agility, recovery. Intelligence, 8, plus or -1/10. Perception, memory, logic, language, learning, creativity. Vibe, 8 plus 1/10. Mood, passion, stress response, integrity. 8 minus 1/10. Consciousness, principles, practice, appearance. 8 plus or -1/10. Features, style, physique, posture, lifespan. 21/59/110. Current/projected/max. 2 new attribute points. A thought struck him. If I put both of these into one stat, will it max out? What happens when it's maxed out? Do I transcend humanity? The urge to experiment was strong. Listening to Alex and Connor talk, he still felt like he was struggling to keep up. If he were just a little smarter, He could probably follow their conversations and contribute, even if he didn't know the subject matter. System, add points to intelligence, he thought. System, specify subcategory. Wow, it's getting more advanced, Leo mused. He chose language and logic. The numbers on his new attribute panel flickered, like a digital calendar flipping over. It wasn't a dramatic leap. Stamina, 8, plus or minus 1, /10. Endurance, speed, strength, agility, recovery. Intelligence, 8. 2, plus or minus 1, /10. Perception, memory, logic +1, language +1, learning, creativity, vibe, 8, +1, /10. Mood, passion, stress response, integrity, 8, -1, /10. Consciousness, principles, practice, appearance, 8, plus or minus 1, /10. Features, style, physique, posture, lifespan, 21/59 plus 1/110. Current / projected / max. Instead of jumping to 10, his intelligence was now 8. 2. Has the system been taking lessons from those scammy mobile games? Leo wondered, his newly enhanced 0. 2 intelligence, keenly aware of the system's stinginess. Some things you really shouldn't learn. They had a few more drinks, chatted a while, and listened to the house band come back on. But when the pop duo, Cosmic Bloom, took the stage again, something was off. The music that had been perfectly fine background noise before now felt grating. Even their fans, who usually screamed the whole time, were quiet. It was like their set had been sabotaged by an invisible force. The truth was, after Leo's performance, no other song could measure up. It was like seeing a perfect painting and then being shown a child's drawing. You just saw the flaws. Cosmic Bloom had their Waterloo moment that night, and the bar on Ember Street had a new legend. After that, no one was in the mood for more music. It felt like it would just pollute their ears. Even Connor was ready to go, so the group decided to call it a night. It wasn't too late, just after 10. If they'd gone to a real club, the night would just be starting. Connor graciously arranged cars for everyone. Leo's group was heading in one direction. Shelley lived nearby, and though Leo offered to see her home, she waved him off. The capital is perfectly safe. A car is fine. I'm a big girl. Connor had to drop his own sister off, so they split into 3 groups, with Ryan Hahn tagging along with Leo and his roommates back to the hotel. The 5 of them piled into a spacious SUV. On the way, Sean was already on his phone, expertly editing the video of Leo's performance to post on TikTok. He'd save the donation video for the next day. It had been a long, fast-paced day. Leo leaned back into the plush seat and stretched. With just the guys in the car, the atmosphere was much more relaxed. He pulled out his phone and opened his messaging app. There was a notification from a small group chat he was in with Professor Hoffman and Judge Cole. Professor Hoffman had renamed it The Confluence. The professor had sent a screenshot of a trending news headline. Newcomer artist M. Donates millions to charity, exploding. Professor Hoffman. Well, so this is what you meant by just hanging out in the Capitol for a bit, huh? The car moved silently through the D.C. night. The city's monuments lit up against the dark sky. Looking out the window at the uniformed guards standing watch at their posts, Leo felt a profound sense of security. This must be what peace in a powerful nation felt like. Soft music played from the car speakers as Leo typed out a reply in the Confluence group chat. Leo, gif of a baby deer bouncing in a sunlit meadow. Leo. Honestly, I wasn't planning on it. Dr. Croft mentioned I could get a tax deduction if I donated a portion, so that was the original idea. But I never imagined the painting would sell for that much. It was a lot. More money than my family and I have ever seen. It felt unsettling, and since I don't really need it right now, I decided to donate it. It's not just going to some random charity, either. It's for Sean's hometown. I've been there. The conditions are really tough. I hope it can help. Leo, it's not as dramatic as the headlines make it sound. I just saw a need and did what I could. With his extra 0. 2 of intelligence, Leo laid out the whole story for Judge Cole and Professor Hoffman. There was no point in trying to be clever. After hearing Connor talk about the incredible journey to become a national leader, a path requiring a perfect storm of talent, willpower, luck, and timing, he knew he was dealing with men at the absolute peak of human intellect. With people like that, honesty was the only strategy. Professor Hoffman was brilliant, and genuinely smart people had no patience for games. Judge Cole. Thumbs up emoji. Judge Cole. A good deed is its own reward, shining like the morning sun. A diligent man stands firm like a pillar in the stream. Heaven favors the steadfast, and your virtue illuminates the world. Professor Hoffman beautifully said, the morning sun part is a nod to Zhuangzi, isn't it? When the sun and moon have risen, the light of a torch is pointless. When a good deed warms others, the doer is also bathed in light, and it illuminates the world is a reference to Wen Tianxiang's righteous song. Truly wonderful, Judge. Thumbs up emoji. Leo, amazing. GIF of a character doing a formal bow. Leo. GIF of a small animal clinging to a leg with the caption, I can only say wow. Judge Cole, it's a good thing you never went into politics, Luke. With your flattery skills, you'd get your boss indicted. Professor Hoffman, haha, no danger of that, Judge. I failed the Foreign Service exam. Got food poisoning the day before the interview and was completely wiped out. Judge Cole. Leo, monkey covering mouth emoji. Judge Cole really was from his grandparents' generation. His own grandfather was the same way, always composing a cheesy poem for holidays and posting in the family group chat, demanding praise. Leo sent his messages, then put his phone away and closed his eyes. A moment later, the system's chime returned. Congratulations, host. Exceptional progress has been made with Diamond Tier Single Man, Sanford Cole. Affinity has reached 73. You have received his sincere blessing. Lifespan +1. Please continue your efforts and strive for greater heights. Whoa. Judge Cole's feedback was always next level. He checked his panel. Sure enough, lifespan 21/60 +1/110, current/projected/max. He'd finally hit 60. He still wouldn't make it to retirement, but maybe dying on the job counted as a workplace injury? Leo thought with a wry smile. Back in a Northwood State dorm, Stella had rushed to change into a new dress before answering Leo's video call. She tried to look calm and collected, but in her haste, she'd yanked her earbuds out and couldn't find them. Seeing Jessica wearing headphones, Stella had just played the call on speaker. At first, the background was noisy, but then Leo's voice cut through, and the bar slowly fell silent. She instinctively turned the volume up, not wanting to miss a single word by fumbling for her earbuds. It was beautiful. Anyone in love would have been grinning like an idiot, a sweet, silly smile plastered across their face. The song was a perfect blend of sweet and melancholy, like a wild berry, not purely sweet, but with a touch of tartness that made your mouth water and left a tingling, pleasant ache in your chest. Jessica, though pretending to read with her headphones on, wasn't listening to anything. She'd heard the whole song. It was just like the first time she'd met him. So casually, so effortlessly brilliant. They say you shouldn't meet someone too amazing when you're young, she thought. It ruins you for everyone else. The memory of his gentle voice made her blush. On the bed, Stella sat cross-legged in her white sundress, a faint pink on her cheeks. She missed him. Jessica shifted, the book resting on her knees. She tried to push the song out of her head, but a strange warmth spread through her body. She coughed a few times, pressing a hand to her chest to stop it, her fingers brushing against the soft curve of her breast. Back at the hotel, they all went to their rooms. Alex felt pretty good about the night. He'd resisted the temptation to drink too much and had a great conversation with Connor, managing not to say anything stupid. Jordan had a blast too, finally understanding why people in old movies love going to taverns to listen to music. It was a pretty good way to spend an evening. Leo and Sean headed into their shared room. Sean still had editing to do, so Leo showered first. While Leo was in the bathroom, Sean reviewed the performance video he'd just uploaded. It looked good. He started working on the donation footage from the afternoon. When Leo came out, clean and ready for bed, he told Sean not to stay up too late. You can finish it in the morning. My productivity spikes at night, Sean said, his eyes bright. Plus, the view from this window is incredible. All these skyscrapers. I'm not tired at all. This is nothing like work back home. It feels like playing. You go ahead and sleep. Leo watched as Sean, full of energy, figured out how to use the room's Nespresso machine and brewed himself a coffee. He snapped a few pictures of Sean brewing the coffee, and then of him focused on his laptop, editing. The hotel room was luxurious, the lighting perfect, making for a great photo backdrop. Sean was always most relaxed around Leo, so the photos came out incredibly well. They captured the handsome, high-cheekboned intensity of the boy from the mountains, his dark skin, his tall, resolute frame. There was no trace of insecurity, only a quiet, hard-working dignity. The setting was a little intimate, maybe two guys sharing a hotel room. In the dorm it was normal, but out in the real world, most guys would get separate rooms to avoid any awkwardness. Leo sent the pictures to Sean and then climbed into bed. He needed to stick to his routine. If he stayed up too late, he'd never get up in the morning. And it had been an incredibly full, intense day. He was tired. He was changing, growing up so fast it was dizzying. He could stand on a stage and give a speech, share his thoughts. He could stand on a stage and sing his heart out. He just kept learning, kept moving forward, almost without realizing it. Leo turned over and was asleep in minutes. Dr. Sean had asked him to help out with something tomorrow, to be his assistant again. Sean looked at the photos Leo had sent him. They were really good. He made a mental note to get them printed. He took a sip of the coffee. It was bitter. He added a sugar packet, then a creamer, and stirred. Ugh, now it was worse. Outside, the lights of the capital gleamed. The streets, once teeming with life, grew quiet, the roads like sleeping dragons in the night. Note 1. The poem was written by D.S. The night stretched on. Many people were still awake long after they should have been asleep. It was past midnight, and reason told them to put their phones away, but their thumbs had a mind of their own, endlessly scrolling. In beds, on couches, in the back of late-night Ubers. In every corner of the city, they were on TikTok. At this hour, the brain was too buzzed for complex tasks. Even gaming was out of the question unless it was something simple. They didn't want to sleep, didn't want to say goodbye to the day. This was the time for mindless scrolling. Funny videos earned a chuckle. Cringy ones were swiped away. Gross content gone in a flash. Anything depressing was scrolled past at warp speed to avoid a spiral. Sometimes a live stream selling something would catch their eye. Late at night, judgment was low, and impulse buys were common. A new journal, a stone ring, an action figure, a bulk order of paper towels. After another eternity of scrolling, the thought returned. I have work tomorrow. I really need to sleep. I'm going to be late. Okay, 10 more minutes. That's it. Colin Shun, a 38-year-old corporate workhorse, decided to watch one last video. Just one. Today, the girl washing his hair had told him he was losing it and should sign up for a scalp treatment package. He was anxious. Was it the meds? He had gout and diabetes. His doctor told him to get more rest, reduce his stress, lose some weight. But his job was sedentary. He sat at a desk all day. When was he supposed to exercise? The doctor said to eat healthier, but he lived on takeout and pre-packaged meals. He was considered one of the successful ones, making over 6 figures a year. 10 minutes flew by. Okay, last one. For real this time. His screen filled with a stage. A young man sat on a high stool, singing. He held a microphone but smiled at the phone propped up in front of him, a smile so pure, so genuinely happy. He seemed a little shy, but you could tell he was in a state of bliss. Then the music began. In the dead of night, Colin's foggy, exhausted mind was jolted awake, as if he'd just downed a bottle of ice-cold water. A young woman was heartbroken. She'd been drinking, crying, throwing a pity party for one. Her friends wouldn't even answer her calls anymore. She cried to her best friend about this guy 100 times, and her friend had always told her to break it off, that he wasn't worth it. But he'd always sweet-talk his way back in. This time was different. This time she'd seen him with his arm around someone else. It was finally over. Her face was swollen from crying. She lay on the floor, phone held above her head. She scrolled and scrolled, and then a video appeared. A handsome guy singing. Men are all trash, she thought, but her thumb didn't swipe away. The song played on a loop. It felt like her mother's hand patting her back gently as a child, lulling her to sleep. Over and over, until her eyes drifted shut. In every corner of the country, different people were seeing the same video. And they were stopping. They were listening. On repeat. The algorithm, sensing the long watch times, began pushing the video to an even wider audience. In the deep of the night, the song of a southern boy filled their ears. Heads on pillows, scrolling. On a long-haul Greyhound bus, scrolling. After a bitter fight, scrolling. After making love, scrolling. Tossing and turning, unable to sleep, scrolling. A delivery driver waiting for an order, scrolling. More and more people found it, and they left comments. Auntie Sue, this is the world I dreamed of. Arizona No Name song. My soul has been cleansed. Louisiana the underscore valley, healed. Ohio Game Master J. Is it normal to cry listening to this? Is it? Alaska sun-kissed. I've seen a million pretty boys dance and lip-sync, but this guy, he just stands there, and I feel like he should be in traditional clothes, stepping out of painting. He looks like he's got secrets, like he's brilliant and full of love. Like a prince. When are you coming to marry me? Florida's simply the best. The voice is so soothing. All my stress for the day is gone. So why am I crying? Texas. Hey, suddenly I want to visit Savannah. Texas, I love steak. I am so in love with this vibe. Montana Princess D. I've reevaluated my entire life. I'm in love with him. Hong Kong old timer, pure bliss. Maine ugly ducking, my bones have melted. California Iran. George Washington only crossed the Delaware once. So self-disciplined. Pennsylvania frequent flyer. Listening to the sirens call. I don't want to go home. Nevada Macerno, 18. Adding this to my bucket list. I have to hear him sing live. I swear I'll die with regrets if I don't. Colorado like the wind. He reminded me of my first love. Georgia's sunny day. Tears are streaming down my face. Oklahoma Import-Export Mobile 1-238-97681. Heavenly voice. My heart skipped a beat. I'm in love. Oregon fish for life. His smile could kill me, and his voice would bring me back to life. He's killing me and reviving me over and over. Utah treasure girl. There's a light in his eyes. The kind of gentle light after a summer rain in the south. What do? I'm in love. Vermont Ninth Circle. A crane's cry in the pines. The sound of water on stone / suddenly shatters like jade on a mountain peak / don't say the heavens have no perfect melody / for here on earth, the phoenix sings. Virginia. The comments poured in, erupting like a whale's spout, multiplying by the second. The follower count on the roommate's account skyrocketed. And it wasn't just theirs. Other people who had been at the bar and posted videos to TikTok or Instagram saw their own numbers explode. One girl, an organizer for the Cosmo Bloom fan club, had posted it to try and get her idol some exposure. Her account, which had hovered around 8,000 followers for months, shot past 50,000. Many of the new followers mistakenly thought Leo was a member of the band. But the most dramatic change was on the Roommate Chronicles. Overnight, in about 10 hours, the account gained 1 million followers. By the time Leo woke up in the morning, it had surpassed 2 million. The Roommate Chronicles at the Roommate Chronicles 112021. 45M likes 191 following 278M followers. Leo woke up, went through his morning routine, and mixed some honey into a bottle of mineral water. Shaking it vigorously, he picked up his phone to check TikTok while he prepared to chug it down. And then, PFFFD, he sprayed honey water all over his phone screen. Last night's video had over 3 million likes. Was this for real? He scrambled over to Sean's bed and shook him awake. Sean rolled over, sat up for a second, and then flopped back down. I was watching that video until 5:30 this morning. Let me sleep a little more, he mumbled. Note to self, no more coffee at night. I was wide awake. Couldn't sleep at all. Sean pulled the covers over his head and went still. Leo went for his morning run anyway. 30 minutes on the treadmill to wake up his body and clear his head. The guy from the other day wasn't there, nor were any of the women. He had the hotel gym all to himself. Running inside wasn't as nice as being outdoors, but it had its advantages. He could control the pace. After a few days, Leo had found his optimal rhythm, a speed that let him work up a light sweat, a pleasant warmth spreading through his body without drenching him. He learned that pushing himself to exhaustion every day was counterproductive, a net loss for his body, especially if he wasn't eating perfectly to compensate. Dr. Croft wasn't there this morning. She'd said yesterday she had something to do, but he wondered if that was just an excuse. After his run, Leo returned to the room. Sean was still fast asleep. It was kind of funny. He never thought he'd see the iron-willed Sean taken down by a single cup of coffee. But Sean rarely drank the stuff. When Leo had told him the pods in the room were free, Sean, who couldn't stand waste, had probably used 2 of them. Leo understood the impulse. They both had that ingrained mentality that if something was free, not using it was like throwing money away, even though they both knew the cost was baked into the exorbitant room rate. He let Sean sleep, took another quick shower, and changed into a more traditional style outfit. He was meeting his godfather, Dr. Shun, this morning, and he figured a man who practiced traditional medicine might appreciate a more classic look. The outfit was one Shelley had bought for him, a simple, modern take on a Mandarin collar shirt. It was black, with a small standing collar embroidered with 2 subtle, silver clouds. He didn't wear it often, feeling it made him look a little older, but he'd packed it for the trip to D.C., thinking it might come in handy. And he was right. He went down to breakfast alone. The others were probably still asleep. When it came to hotel buffets, he was a creature of habit. He grabbed the same things he'd enjoyed yesterday. Hotel stays were best for 2 or 3 days. By the 4th, the breakfast buffet starts to get old. It was strange how you could eat the same food at home your whole life, but eat at the same restaurant a few times and you'd be sick of it. After eating, Leo got a rideshare to the boutique hotel where the Shuns were staying. A black government car was already waiting out front. As soon as Leo stepped out, he was ushered into the other vehicle. He noticed the license plate was different, remembering Connor saying that certain government plates signified which department they belonged to. Not that Leo knew the codes, but he knew it was an official car. Dr. Shin was already inside, a medical case resting on the seat next to him. Leo got in and offered to hold it for him. His godfather looked particularly sharp this morning, impeccably dressed in a similar traditional style. Eleanor and Shelley were there to see them off. Shelley's eyes lit up when she saw Leo's outfit. It looks wonderful on you. Yesterday, Dr. Shin had told him they were going to visit a former patient of his for a follow-up. He'd told Leo to just act as his assistant and not to be nervous. After everything I've been through, I'm not nervous at all, Leo thought. Then the car started moving, passing through gate after gate, checkpoint after checkpoint, each one manned by guards holding rifles. Despite his internal pep talk, Leo's legs started to bounce. His body was betraying his true feelings. He was, in fact, very nervous. His recently upgraded intelligence gave him a subtle new perception of the world. Before, attribute increases had felt like massive leaps. But the difference between smart and smarter wasn't a chasm. It was more nuanced. It was like his thoughts moved just a little bit faster, without a fundamental change in his nature. As they passed through the layers of security, he realized they were visiting someone incredibly important. Far more important than Judge Cole, who was already at a level most people could never hope to meet. No private car could ever get in here. The surroundings became lush and green, like they had driven into a forest in the middle of the city. His new intelligence told him it was an illusion. The grounds weren't that vast, but the roads were designed to be winding and disorienting, a clever trick to make the space feel larger and more secure. He knew his godfather was taking him to see a patient of immense stature, but he reminded himself, I'm not here to ask for anything. Just be here. When you want nothing, you have nothing to fear. They drove for a few more minutes and entered an underground garage. Rows and rows of cars, no discernible markings. They descended several levels. The car parked, and they were led through a door directly into the building. They never even saw the exterior. The door seemed to have a built-in security scanner. After passing through another set of doors, they were greeted and led to an elevator. There were no numbers for the floors, just names: Veritas, Lyra, Orion, Sanctuary, Haven. The elevator stopped at Veritas. The air inside was crisp and clean, like being in a forest with high oxygen levels. Dr. Shin walked ahead, his expression serious, not saying a word. Leo followed, carrying the case. In truth, Dr. Shin was quite pleased. Last time he came, he'd been alone and a little on edge. This time, bringing his godson gave him a sense of pride. The greatest joy for an old master is to have a successor. His steps were a little lighter. The boy's massage yesterday had been incredible. It felt as if years of chronic aches had been erased. Of course, he knew that was an illusion. Healing is a long process. But the immediate relief was undeniable. He seriously considered that even if Leo had never studied before, it wasn't too late to start. In his early 20s, his mind was sharp, he was mature, and he could focus. 10 years of dedicated study, and he'd be a master in his early 30s, just entering his prime. In his profession, that was still considered young. Dr. Shin had been raised by his great-aunt and had no obsession with passing his knowledge to a blood relative. What mattered was character. And yesterday, watching Leo receive a life-changing amount of money and, without any prompting, donate it all to a specific meaningful cause that showed he had a good heart. He was kind, but not a naive saint. His charity had purpose and order. It was a far better choice than just handing the money to his roommate. Dr. Shin felt a deep sense of contentment. He had found his successor. They were led down a quiet hall and finally came to a stop. Leo's palms were slick with sweat. Even if you didn't follow the news, you knew who the major players were. Just yesterday, he'd been listening to Connor talk about what it takes for an ordinary person to become a national leader. And today, this ordinary person was about to meet one. The man in person wasn't handsome. He was much older, more frail than he appeared on television. The room was kept at a warm 78 degrees. Dr. Shin greeted the old leader respectfully. People who hold true power are often remarkably stable. The trope of the shouting, raging executive was a fiction. In reality, someone who couldn't control their emotions wouldn't last long at the top. Leo saw a cordial old man, but he could also see the shadows of the power he once wielded. There was a severity in the set of his jaw, in the deep lines around his mouth, that spoke of a lifetime of decisive, unyielding authority. Of course, Leo's role was to be silent. He was just here to assist. You're looking well, Stephen, the old leader said, his voice surprisingly robust. Sir, let me take a look at you, Dr. Shin replied, getting straight to the point. One didn't come through all this security for small talk. Leo opened the medical case on a nearby table. It contained acupuncture needles, a small pillow for taking a pulse, and various other instruments and medicines. He had asked his godfather on the way how to open and arrange everything, putting the lessons he'd learned as Professor Reed's assistant to good use. Dr. Shin took the man's pulse, his face a mask of concentration. A master practitioner could tell almost everything from the pulse, the face, the tongue, the eyes. It was the traditional equivalent of a full battery of modern medical tests. And at Dr. Shin's level, his diagnosis was as good as any machine's. After a few moments, he spoke. There's a deep-seated systemic imbalance. The function of several organs is in decline. He looked at the old leader. You've been experiencing dizziness lately, haven't you? The ringing in your ears has gotten worse. Some heart palpitations, a constant chill, frequent urination at night, and difficulty sleeping. Pain in your lower back, some swelling in your legs, and a cough in the mornings. He didn't wait for an answer. Your pulse is deep and faint. We'll approach this in 3 stages. First, we treat the symptoms to provide immediate relief and prevent a potential stroke. The long-term goal is to treat the root cause, to restore your foundational energy and improve circulation. We'll supplement this with external treatments. Moxibustion at specific times to tonify the kidneys, and herbal foot soaks in the evening to draw out impurities. Dr. Shin wrote down a prescription and handed it to the man's personal physician. Follow this regimen. I'll be back for the next conference in 5 years or so to check on your progress. The personal physician's eyebrows twitched. It was a doctor's guarantee. You will live at least another 5 years. The old leader understood, too. A wave of confidence seemed to wash over him. He didn't always like seeing Dr. Shin. The man was too blunt. But that same bluntness made his reassurances feel like solid gold. The tense atmosphere in the room suddenly eased. Even Leo felt himself exhale. Dr. Shin knew his role. He was a doctor, not a courtier. His currency was competence. Sir, he said, gesturing to Leo, this is my godson and apprentice, Leo Foster. His massage technique is extraordinary. I brought him here today to have him work on you. The personal physician stiffened, about to object. It seemed Dr. Shin was trying to push his protege forward too quickly, using the leader's health as a showcase. But he held his tongue. He knew his boss didn't like others making decisions for him. Perhaps buoyed by the 5-year plan, the old leader smiled and agreed. Leo had suspected this was coming, but as he stepped forward, his heart hammered against his ribs. His godfather had packed a set of clean cotton cloths in the case. He draped one over the leader's shoulders as he sat in a chair. The old man chuckled. No need to be nervous, son. We have to give young people a chance. Go on, Leo. You can't break me. It might be a little painful, Leo said quietly. The leader's smile didn't falter. Pain and I are old friends. Leo said no more. He focused, activating the system's massage proficiency. He gently palpated the man's head, shoulders, and back, mapping the tension, then began to apply pressure, moving from one acupoint to the next with methodical precision. The leader, who had just claimed to be unafraid of pain, let out a series of low groans with each point Leo pressed. The personal physician watched nervously, but even he could see the technique was that of a master, not a novice. Each point Leo targeted sent a radiating sensation of aching, tingling relief through the man's body. When he pressed the points at the base of the skull, the ones meant to awaken the mind, the leader's eyes flew open for a second, a look of pure clarity on his face. He later recalled that a problem that had been nagging him for weeks suddenly resolved itself in that single, electrifying moment. After working on his shoulders, Leo had the man lie face down to work on his back. By the 3rd point, he pressed on his lower back. A loud, even snore filled the room. The snoring was thunderous. The moment Leo's hands left his back, the old man's eyes opened. Did I fall asleep? Yes, sir, Leo replied. He sat up, looking puzzled. It felt like I just blinked. Are you sure? The snores had been audible in the next room. You were asleep? The personal physician confirmed. Very deeply. You were snoring quite loudly. Dr. Shin smiled. Sir, did you notice that you sat up by yourself? You didn't need anyone to help you. The man paused, looking down at his own body as if seeing it for the first time. It was true. For years, the simple act of getting out of bed had been a struggle, requiring assistance for fear of a fall. But just now, he had rolled over and sat up as easily as he had in his youth. The feeling of being light, of being free from the constant dull ache, was intoxicating. It was like he'd shed years. How do you feel, sir? Dr. Shin asked. Good, the old man said, his voice firm. Very good. At that moment, Leo's mind was a chaotic jumble of system notifications, leaving his face looking blank and dazed. Host has completed the massage task with outstanding performance. Psychological fortitude was steady and execution was flawless. You have received the target's sincere gratitude. Reward, attribute point +1. The attribute panel popped up. He was stunned. A direct attribute point. not tied to affinity. That was a first. He had horseback riding later, and more intelligence wouldn't help much there. He allocated the point to agility under stamina. Stamina, 8. 1 plus or minus 1 / 10 endurance, speed, strength, agility plus 1 recovery. The 0. 1 increase sent a subtle feeling of lightness through his limbs. While he was processing the system's gift, his expression remained placid, which the old man interpreted as the quiet confidence of a master craftsman. Just like Dr. Shen, he thought, a man dedicated to his art. Dr. Shen knew when to make his exit. He had re-established his value and introduced his successor. He didn't need to show off all of Leo's talents at once. He knew that after today, the leader's people would be very interested in Leo Foster, and they could discover his other gifts on their own. As they left, the route felt different, but just as winding. The return trip, however, was much more relaxed. Leo felt that he could do this a dozen more times without fear. It was like a high-stakes quest with an incredible reward. Dr. Shen, too, let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. His palms were also sweaty. After a moment of silence, he asked Leo, "Do you remember the prescription I gave?" "I remember the words," Leo said, "but I don't understand what they mean. Recite it for me." Leo closed his eyes and repeated the complex series of herbs and treatment timings flawlessly. Dr. Shen nodded, a proud smile on his face. He knew the boy had a gift. That was how traditional medicine was taught. First, you memorized. You recited the formulas until they were part of you, and only then would their true meaning reveal itself. Even now, he still recited them. They returned to the hotel just before lunch. Dr. Shen suggested they eat there. While Leo was preparing tea, a notary arrived with a stack of documents for him to sign. The act of brewing the tea calmed Leo's frayed nerves. He realized just how tense he had been. Dr. Shen, too, took a sip and let out a long sigh of relief. Then Leo looked at the documents, and his jaw dropped. He looked up, stunned. "Godfather, godmother, this is too much. I can't accept this." "It's yours. Take it," Eleanor Shun said warmly. "Your godfather, and I want to treat you and Shelley equally. The townhouse is in her name, and this penthouse will be in yours. If you ever want to come to the capital for advanced studies, you'll have a place to stay. Don't feel guilty about it, Dr. Shun added. You helped me get that new herbal formula to market. Besides, I bought this place years ago when it was much cheaper. Think of it as a thank you bonus." Leo's mind was reeling. A thank you bonus? He quickly texted Jordan, asking about real estate prices in that area. Jordan replied instantly. At the peak, it was going for almost $3,000 per square foot. It's come down a bit, but you're still looking at around $2,000 per SQ foot. Leo looked at the deed. 2,895 square feet. That was nearly $6 million. "Godfather, godmother, this is really too much. I can't possibly accept it," he stammered, feeling faint. "This is insane. I can't take it. I can't." While mentally holding his pockets wide open, the hotel was high-end, and the rooms were more expensive than 5-star hotels. It also offered meals, prepared by a chef from the South, as the owner was from Georgia. For lunch, they serve a table of Southern-inspired cuisine, focusing on light, fresh flavors. One of the dishes was a deconstructed, modernist take on bouillabaisse. Leo took one bite and put his fork down. It was terrible, with an overpowering muddy, fishy taste. The other dishes were mediocre at best, but the bouillabaisse was uniquely, memorably awful. Dr. Shen wasn't one for stuffy dinner rules like no talking at the table. His philosophy was that a happy heart was the best medicine. If you had something to say, you said it. A clear conscience led to a healthy body. The notary had left, and Leo was now the technical owner of a penthouse near Major D.C. University, a place he'd never even seen. He was still in a daze. He wondered if his passive buff, good deeds are rewarded, had been triggered. This was a hell of a reward. Seeing that no one was touching the fish stew, Leo quipped, "Maybe we're just in the wrong place to be eating this." Shelley looked at him curiously. Would it taste better somewhere else? "Sure," Leo said with a straight face. "If we were eating this on a pier, we could just dump the whole plate into the ocean." Eleanor and Dr. Shen chuckled. Shelley burst out laughing. "That's such a terrible dad joke." After lunch and a short rest, a car arrived to pick them up. It was Connor, driving himself. He seemed a little surprised to see Leo. "I was in the area, so this was on my way," he explained. "I was helping my godfather with something," Leo said. "So Shelley and I will just ride with you." In the car, Leo closed his eyes to rest. Connor struck up a light conversation with Shelley. Connor was worldly, charming, handsome, and had a promising future with an impeccable family background. He was the kind of person you simply didn't meet in normal life. Your circles would never intersect. He was about the same age as Shelley, just a few months younger. Connor had recently gotten out of a serious relationship. She was a classmate from college, a beautiful and brilliant girl from a very ordinary family in rural Pennsylvania. For a young man in love, he'd been willing to throw everything away, his career path in D.C., his family's connections. He'd even considered moving to her small town, where he could afford a house on his own. But she was the one who ended it. She told him bluntly that she had no intention of moving back home. She wanted a life in D.C. And, she added, her father was demanding a $100,000 gift before he'd approve the marriage, to compensate him for the cost of her education. Connor had been floored. It wasn't that he couldn't get the money, but the principle was insulting. Why should his parents have to pay for his love? The demand felt so short-sighted, so transactional. The relationship crumbled under the weight of it. The breakup was for the best, but the memories of their happy times were real. Last night, Leo's song had brought them all flooding back. He'd stayed up late, looking at her social media. She just posted about a new guy she'd met. His heart ached with a mixture of regret and relief. And so, being a man of action, he had decided to come pick up Shelley himself today. He knew she was single, and from their brief interactions, she seemed wonderfully genuine, protected from the world's cynicism. She was sweet-tempered and straightforward, not the type to play games. He thought she was a great girl. He wasn't planning anything serious, but it was a start, an opportunity, so he was attentive on the ride over. Leo, meanwhile, was actually asleep. The morning's events, which hadn't felt stressful at the time, had left him deeply fatigued. He dozed off to the gentle motion of the car. Shelley, sitting beside him, gently draped her scarf over him to keep him warm. Though she was talking to Connor, her eyes kept drifting back to Leo, worried he'd get a stiff neck. Ryan Hahn was yawning as he drove. He'd gotten back late last night and, not wanting to wake his family, had crashed at his own apartment. He was too wired to sleep. He'd spent hours watching photography tutorials online, messing with his expensive camera gear. He was a classic case of all the gear and no idea, but he was happy. His allowance was probably bigger than Connor Brighton's. He finally fell asleep in the early hours of the morning and dreamed that he'd shot an incredible video that went viral overnight, making him a star. He woke up at 10:30 a.m. and checked TikTok. The dream had come true. A video had blown up, getting millions of views overnight. The only problem was he hadn't been the one to shoot it. Why didn't I just film it? Why was I just sitting there drinking? Sean's video was good, but not that good. What made it go so viral? He'd let a golden opportunity slip through his fingers. He scrambled to get ready and finally made it to the hotel by noon, still half asleep. He was yawning. Sean was yawning too. He'd missed breakfast and had to grab something from the executive lounge. Alex and Jordan, seeing that Sean had slept in, hadn't bothered to wake him. The four of them set out together. Ryan was still yawning at the wheel, occasionally speeding up while doing so, making Alex nervous. Note to self, Alex thought, never hire a driver like this. 5 demerits. Riding with Ryan was more stressful than driving himself. Besides, sitting in the back of a G-Wagon was surprisingly uncomfortable. He'd much rather have a Maybach if he ever had the money and his parents' permission, which he wouldn't. Seeing Ryan's flashy car, Alex knew his aunt and uncle had no plan for their son to enter public service. Ryan was too flamboyant, too naive. He'd end up taking the fall for someone else's mistakes. That coffee last night really messed me up, Sean said, finishing a yawn. I was wired all night, but it really works. Maybe I should chug a cup before my next exam. Might add 10 points to my score. Jordan chuckled. That's only because you never drink it. It stops working if you have it all the time. A lot of celebrities drink an iced Americano first thing in the morning to reduce puffiness. What's an iced Americano? Sean asked. Just espresso and ice, Ryan chimed in from the driver's seat. Talking while driving, Alex thought. Another 5 demerits. In the other car, Connor found that Shelley was most engaged when the conversation turned to her brother, Leo. Connor, who had a knack for reading people, quickly relaxed, dropping any pretense. The conversation flowed more easily after that. He glanced in the rearview mirror at the sleeping Leo, then noticed the scarf Shelley had placed over him. He smiled. Shelley, what was Leo up to this morning? He seems exhausted. I'm not sure, she said, shaking her head. My dad said he was visiting a patient and had Leo assist him, but they were back pretty quickly. I don't know why he's so tired. I saw the TikTok of him singing last night. It was amazing. Even through the phone, it was powerful, but being there live was something else. Listening to that song makes you want to travel. Shelley's whole face lit up. Yes, exactly. I always thought the South was just humid and buggy, but his song, it created this beautiful, romantic image in my mind. Just then, Leo started to stir. He'd had a solid 30-minute nap. Shelley saw he was awake and handed him a cup of water from her thermos. Leo was always impressed by how prepared his sister was. He took a sip of the warm water, feeling refreshed. They still had a way to go to the ranch. Getting out of D.C. could take an hour on a good day. Leo, feeling a bit of a hero worship for Connor, decided to pick up a conversation they'd started the other night. Connor, you were talking about that DeepSeek AI the other day. Can you really trust its answers? Like, for paper? Connor, multitasking, answered while scrolling through his phone. Not yet. I tried to use it to summarize a specific academic paper. It gave me a full summary, citations, everything. Looked perfect, but I'd actually read the paper before, and I realized it was all fake. The AI just made it up because it couldn't find a real one. It fabricated an entire academic paper from scratch. Shelley laughed. Well, it's definitely intelligent. It already knows how to lie. Exactly, Connor said, and when I called it out, it apologized profusely and said it would provide the correct information. Then it just made up a different version. Leo and Shelley both laughed. Chatting with Connor was always interesting. Connor was smiling, but his eyes narrowed as he scanned a message on his phone. He was in dozens of group chats, for work, for friends, for hobbies. They were a constant stream of information, some real, some fake. You had to learn to tell the difference. A message in one of his chats with other sons of powerful families caught his eye. A friend was asking if anyone knew a young traditional medicine doctor, surname starting with an F. He was only in his early 20s, but was supposedly a prodigy, already surpassing his famous master. The friend was looking for an introduction. Connor wouldn't normally pay attention, but the description sounded familiar. Surname starting with an F? Early 20s? Master practitioner for a teacher? Visiting one of Dr. Shin's patients? He glanced in the rearview mirror again. Could it be you, Leo? At that moment, Leo was sitting right behind him. The weather was perfect, sunny, with almost no wind. The hour-long drive was worth it. The ranch stretched out before them, a vast, open plain under a wide sky, with a river sparkling in the distance. Even with the winter-brown grass, it was beautiful. Leo and his roommates arrived at about the same time. Alex's group would have been earlier, but Ryan had gotten caught up in conversation and missed 2 turns. 10 demerits, Alex thought grimly. When they pulled up, Connor got out first and, to Leo's surprise, opened the car door for him. Okay, that's weird, Leo thought. Is he imagining something? He's being way too nice to me. If he opened the door for Shelley, I'd think he was being a gentleman or trying to impress her. But for me? Connor, you don't like guys, do you? A man with a thick beard, a cigar clamped between his teeth, and a large gold ring on his finger came out to greet them, his voice booming. Welcome, welcome, Mr. Brighton. Your presence honors us. You're too kind, Mr. Joan, Connor said, though his brow furrowed slightly. Mr. Sloan gave instructions this morning that you and your friends were to be given the best treatment. The group, now 7 in total, was led to a private section of the massive ranch. Connor had been here twice before, and both times, the owner himself, Dylan Sloan, had been there to greet him. This time, it was just the manager. It felt different. Connor knew the owner had been told he was coming. For him, to be absent meant he was either dealing with someone more important, or he had a crisis on his hands. This kind of snub was common in D.C., but it still stung. Of course, Connor didn't let it show. He was here to have a good time. They were taken to choose their horses and offered riding gear. Leo was excited. He'd had the equestrian buff for 10 days, and now the other shoe was finally dropping. Sean, it turned out, was a natural on horseback. He could probably film while riding. Jordan, cautious about his weight, picked a sturdy, slow-moving draft horse. Alex just wanted one that looked impressive, but was gentle. Shelley had taken lessons before, but a bad fall had left her with some lingering fear. She also requested a calm horse. Leo, however, picked a powerful, spirited stallion. As everyone got their horses, Connor hung back, reading the message from his friend again. It was about General Ingram's father, a retired 4-star general who suffered from chronic pain. The family had heard through a very exclusive channel about a healing hand, and were desperate for an introduction. For a family like the Ingrams to be seeking someone out like this meant the source was ironclad, and that the healer was not someone they could just summon. They needed a proper introduction. A patient, Dr. Shin has to visit in person here in D.C. The pieces clicked into place for Connor. He could be the one to make that introduction. The best way to build a lasting relationship wasn't through money, but through mutual favors. His current connection to Leo was tenuous. He was the friend of his roommate's cousin. He could make it much stronger. Just as Leo was about to mount his horse, he got a call from Dr. Shun, asking him to carry his bag for another appointment tomorrow. Leo readily agreed. The riding instructor watched as Leo swung himself into the saddle with the fluid grace of a seasoned professional and knew he wasn't needed. Leo took off, quickly outpacing the others. Connor watched him go, his certainty growing. This kid was special. He snapped a picture of Leo on horseback, then posted it to his private social media feed, visible only to Landon Ingram. A friend came to visit from afar. Such a delight. The hook was baited. Now he just had to wait. If you're going to do something, do it right. See it through to the end. That was Leo's philosophy. He treated the ride as a mission to be completed. He galloped for 2 exhilarating laps, the feeling of the powerful animal beneath him intoxicating. It all came back to him in a rush. Sean, fully recovered from his coffee-induced insomnia, rode alongside, camera in hand, filming Leo. Ryan had brought his own expensive camera, determined to learn from the master, but he could barely stay on his horse, let alone operate a camera. Alex and Jordan ambled along at a leisurely pace, enjoying the perfect weather. Shelley, too, after a few tentative circuits, regained her confidence. The muscle memory of her lessons kicked in, and soon she was riding with elegant, practiced form, easily keeping pace with Leo as they raced across the field. While they rode, Connor chatted with the ranch manager, Mr. Joan. He learned that the owner, Dylan Sloan, was indeed dealing with a crisis. The ranch was being threatened with closure due to supposed code violations. Someone was using it as leverage to force a sale. They'd offered Dylan $3 million for the entire property, the land, the facilities, and all the horses. It was highway robbery. One of his purebreds was worth more than that. But the fact that they dared to make such an offer meant they had the power to back up their threat. Dylan was in a tight spot, which was why he'd been forced to miss Connor's arrival. Connor listened, filed the information away, and then went back to focusing on his guests. He didn't chase after Leo. Instead, he rode with Alex, Jordan, and Ryan, making casual conversation. He knew that to get close to someone like Leo, you didn't flatter them. You befriended the people they cared about. From what he'd observed, Leo was fiercely loyal to his roommates. Just as he was planning his next move, Dylan Sloan himself came jogging over, looking stressed but still handsome in a disheveled way, wearing a pair of Lindbergh glasses. "Connor, my friend, I am so sorry. I had something I had to deal with." Connor was all warmth and smiles. He clapped Dylan on the shoulder. "Don't worry about it. I heard what's going on. If you need anything, just say the word." The simple offer of help almost brought tears to Dylan's eyes. He'd been getting the cold shoulder from everyone lately. "Man, just hearing you say that means a lot. It's my own fault for not being more careful, but they're just trying to bully me out of my property. The money they're offering isn't even enough to cover severance for my staff." "Don't panic," Connor said smoothly. "There's always a way. In fact, there's someone I'd like you to meet." He led Dylan over to where they could see Leo riding. Dylan's eyes lit up. He himself was a good-looking guy, but lately, he'd been looking rough. Just the other day, he'd been eating at a cheap diner when some guy, claiming to be a director, tried to cast him in a web series, saying he was the perfect tortured billionaire CEO. The plot was so moronic, he'd nearly thrown his food at the man. He might be down on his luck, but he wasn't brain dead. Now, looking at Leo on horseback, Dylan felt the same electric jolt the greasy director must have felt looking at him. The boy wore a traditional shirt, but looked like royalty. His presence alone seemed to elevate the horse he was riding into a priceless steed. He was magnificent. "Wow," Dylan breathed, his eyes gleaming. "That guy is an incredible rider, and he looks amazing. Are you thinking what I'm thinking? If I could get him to ride one of my racehorses for some promo shots, I could probably sell a few and get enough cash to solve my current problem." Connor nearly stumbled. Well, he thought, he has a brain, just not a very big one. Thank God for the low bar set by the heirs of other prominent families. It makes the competition so much less fierce. Leo was on horseback when he saw Connor Brighton approaching. He trotted over and dismounted, offering a nod. After all, Connor was footing the bill today, and the guy paying the tab was always the boss. Connor smiled. "Leo, this is my friend Dylan Sloan. He owns the ranch." "Dylan, this is my friend Leo." After the brief introduction, Connor left them to it. Dylan gave a polite nod, but a moment after Connor walked away, it clicked. Connor wouldn't have made such a formal introduction for just any handsome riding instructor. And he'd called the guy Leo, not just by his first name, but with a certain weight, the way you'd introduce someone important. This was the guest Connor was here to entertain. "Hey, Connor," Dylan murmured, catching up to him. "What's the story with Leo?" "Can't say much," Connor said, his voice low. "But I can tell you, he casually donated over $1 million yesterday. A directed donation. And he's still in college. Your problem, which seems complicated to you, is probably just a single phone call for him." Leo, meanwhile, was blissfully unaware. If he could hear their thoughts, he probably would have fallen right off his horse. To him, Connor was just a classic D.C. type. Even when he was supposed to be relaxing, he was constantly networking, never a moment of rest. It made Leo appreciate the simplicity of being a student. He needed to soak up this time with Alex. Once Alex followed his family's path into government, he'd probably be just as busy. Leo galloped a few exhilarating laps, then rode alongside Shelley for a while. He snapped a few pictures to send to Stella and had Sean film a video for her. Then he turned his horse and went to find Alex and his cousin Jordan. Riding alone to look cool got old fast. The whole point of coming out together was to be together. With the system's guidance on proper form, Leo was a better instructor than the professionals on staff. For some reason, when he explained things, people just got it. They listened. Sean filmed from side. His own riding style, much like his swimming, was a chaotic, self-taught mess. It was impossible to correct, but he got the job done. He could navigate a rocky creek and ride a wild donkey up a hillside, all on pure instinct. Ryan Hahn, Alex's cousin, didn't quite manage to film himself while riding, but he was definitely feeling the joy of learning. Leo is a freaking genius, he thought. Ryan had always been a little intimidated by horses. He wanted to ride, but couldn't get the hang of it. After just a few pointers from Leo, everything clicked. The instructions just made sense. It was like his brain absorbed them instantly. Was he secretly an equestrian prodigy? His confidence soared. With his barely there skills, he was already hollering with joy, feeling like he was on top of the world as he urged the patient instructor to let him take the horse for a spin outside the paddock. Alex felt his own skills improve dramatically, and he sat tall in the saddle, feeling expansive. Jordan was convinced he'd just picked a superior horse, a plump, sturdy, and gentle creature. He wobbled on its back like a big, friendly slime mold, easily mastering the basics. Everyone was having a blast. Shelley was too. With Leo there, her anxiety vanished. She was finally conquering the lingering fear from her fall, and it felt like a weight had been lifted from her chest. She realized now how badly it had shaken her. She'd been waking up with a jolt in the middle of the night for weeks. Her dad had prescribed a calming herbal tea that helped a little, but the nightmares persisted. It was true what they said, if you fall off a horse, you have to get right back on. Her expression was vibrant and alive as she rode, making her seem even more beautiful. Connor watched them from a distance, not wanting to intrude. For a moment, he felt a pang of envy for their easy, genuine friendship. It felt so pure. He couldn't remember the last time he'd had a connection that uncomplicated, probably not since middle school. Just as he was lost in thought, the fish he'd been baiting all day took the hook. Liam Ingram had arrived. Dylan Sloan nearly jumped out of his skin. How in the world had Liam Ingram, the little tyrant of D.C., ended up at his ranch? And he'd arrived in a government vehicle with official plates, flanked by several bodyguards. There weren't many people who could still pull off that level of ostentatious power in the capital these days. But the Ingrams were different. The family patriarch was a high-ranking general who had held onto his influence and his life for a very long time. The second generation was powerful, with a bright future ahead of them. Dylan used to wonder why some families would keep their elders alive in the ICU, enduring so much pain. Now he understood. Without his own grandfather, his parents were living off the family's legacy, and he was living off what was left of that. Once the legacy ran out, any stray dog could come and kick him. Liam arrived with a government car leading the way, his security detail looking like off-duty soldiers. His name, Liam, was deceptively simple. The story was he'd been a sickly baby, and General Ingram, worried he wouldn't survive, had given him a plain name. He'd grown up healthy, but the name stuck. He was a prince, spoiled beyond belief, the only male heir of his generation. Miraculously, he hadn't been completely ruined by it. He could be arrogant, but he was fiercely devoted to his family, having been raised by the general himself. He was impulsive and a bit of a bully, but his moral compass was sound. Connor had never heard of him crossing any major lines. His reputation was questionable, but if you looked closely, his misdeeds were trivial, never matters of true right and wrong. That was why Connor was willing to make the introduction. Liam walked up and, surprisingly, addressed Connor politely. Connor. Dylan stood by meekly. He tried to remember if he'd ever offended Liam. Probably not, but a buddy of his had, and that guy was now exiled to some backwater state, never to return. Then he heard the little tyrant ask Connor to introduce him to Leo. Dylan's brain short-circuited. Liam Ingram had driven all the way out here to meet Connor's guest, the same guest Connor had just introduced him to, and he'd been too dense to realize the significance. Connor, ever the smooth operator, graciously made the introduction. Leo saw Connor approaching with a kid who looked even younger than he was. Liam Ingram had a round, boyish face. To a stranger, he looked adorable, big eyes, fair skin, utterly harmless. It was precisely that innocent appearance that made his domineering personality so jarring. People who mistook him for a sweet little kid usually ended up regretting it. Liam had a long memory and the vindictive streak of a spoiled child. Leo didn't know any of this. He just saw a round-faced kid who, upon meeting him, already had a favorability rating of 70. Congratulations, host. You have made initial progress with the heirloom grade gold tier bachelor, Liam Ingram. Favorability has reached 70. Please continue your efforts and strive for new heights. Liam Ingram, 19. Net worth, $2. 79 million. Allowance. Knowledge, 75. Appearance, 80. A rich kid, Leo noted. And the system's new classification was amusing. Heirloom grade gold tier? Was that because the price of gold had shot up recently? His knees still had that instinctual urge to buckle when he saw a number that large. But then he remembered he now owned 2 properties. The feeling passed. Just SOSO. Money really was a man's courage. Connor introduced him as a friend. The kid looked shy, his face slightly flushed. Leo found it endearing. Hey, Liam, he said with a wave. We're learning to ride. Want to join? I can teach you. He was already teaching a group. What was one more? Liam's face was red, but not from shyness. It was from fury. It had been years since anyone had dared to call him kid. He wanted to tell Leo he didn't like riding. It made his ass hurt. But the words that came out were, "Sure, Leo." Liam's eyes widened. Since when had he mastered the art of speaking against his own will? To his own astonishment, he found himself dutifully learning to ride a horse. Ryan Hahn, giddy from his own successful ride, trotted back over. He saw Leo teaching someone new and did a double take. That round-faced boy, diligently trying to mount the horse, correcting his posture, focusing so intently. Ryan's jaw dropped. He nudged Connor's arm, his voice a horrified whisper. Connor, is that the tyrant? Did he get possessed or something? Why is he being so cooperative? I've been gone for a few years. Did he find religion? I swear before I left for school, he used a forklift to hang some guy who hit on him from a tree for an entire night. Liam's inner monologue was a string of curses. I'm not learning this, stupid. His mouth, however, was saying, okay, Leo, like this? Is this how I hold the reins? Leo, empowered by his teacher's aura buff, smiled encouragingly. Exactly like that. You're a natural. A real pro. Liam's inner voice screamed, I don't want your praise, this is so damn awkward. But a smile crept across his face, his lips twitching upwards. Of course I'm a pro. I'm the best. The wind swept across the plains under a vast blue sky dotted with fluffy white clouds. Actually knowing how to ride a horse versus being led around by an instructor were 2 completely different experiences. Even Ryan Hahn was convinced he was a prodigy, a natural equestrian talent that had lain dormant until this very day. He was already riding independently, like a kid who just learned to ride a bike, yelling at his parents to let go of the seat. Mastering a new skill so quickly, going from nothing to something, was a deeply satisfying rush. It was better than winning a video game, second only to acing your SATs after months of studying. The core feeling was the same, a surge of joy and a powerful boost of self-confidence. Liam Ingram knew his nickname was the Tyrant. It wasn't flattering. It marked him as one of D.C.'s spoiled brats. He didn't seem to have much ambition, but in reality, humans are social creatures. Everyone craves growth and progress. It's like learning to crawl, then walk, then run. As an adult, you realize that learning isn't always easy or even possible. So many people just give up and lie flat to avoid the struggle. But what if you told someone that if they studied, they were guaranteed to get into Harvard? Would they do it? Of course they would. Who wouldn't want to go to Harvard? They just think they can't. The Tyrant was no different. Did he want to be talented and accomplished? Of course he did. He just couldn't achieve it in most things, so he'd adapted to his life in his own way. So here he was, having come to find someone for a specific purpose, and instead, he was inexplicably learning a new skill. Under Leo's patient guidance, he'd somehow grasped the fundamentals of riding, and he was good at it. His butt didn't even hurt that much anymore. Apparently, the pain came from doing it wrong. Once you synced with the horse's rhythm, it was effortless, like finding your balance on a bike. Liam rode circles in the paddock, his expression serious, but unable to contain his bubbling happiness. Because he was behaving so well, Leo's roommates warmed up to him. His cherubic face was misleading. He just looked like a super cute kid. Jordan and Liam hit it off almost immediately. Alex, with his high emotional intelligence, knew exactly how to deal with someone from a political dynasty like Liam's, making him feel comfortable. The tyrant was having so much fun, he almost forgot why he'd come. It was only when he saw Connor that he remembered he had business with Leo. Liam said, his initial confidence returning. I heard you're amazing at therapeutic massage. I was wondering if you could help my grandfather. I'm booked tomorrow morning, Leo said, but I'm free other times. I should be clear, though, I'm not a licensed medical professional. If you want me to do it, I need to ask my godfather to come with me. He's a doctor. A massage is usually just for symptom relief. It doesn't cure the underlying problem. If he's sick, he really needs to see a proper physician. Leo figured Connor's friend must be from a wealthy family. He wasn't worried about getting sued, but it was better to be upfront. I know. Just making him a little more comfortable would be a huge help. Please, Leo, if you can, the sooner the better. How about tonight? Liam was impatient, a man of action. He heard about Leo, tracked him down, and now, having learned to ride, he was ready to whisk him away. Riding was fun, but it could wait. Leo called his godfather. Dr. Shen was strolling through Bergdorf's with his wife, a nostalgic trip for them. With their daughter and godson off on their own, the old couple was enjoying a rare date. He was startled to get Leo's call, his first thought being that Shelley had gotten into trouble again. When he heard Leo needed him to supervise a massage for a friend, he couldn't help but nod in approval. He was even more impressed by the boy's maturity. He hadn't let a little praise for his skills go to his head. Medicine was a matter of life and death. You couldn't be careless. Even though Dr. Shun had a significant reputation in his field, he was more than happy to act as a safety net for his godson. It was like booking an appointment with a resident, only to have the resident get stumped and call in his mentor, who just happens to be a world-renowned specialist you could never get an appointment with otherwise. Dr. Shin felt a bit like that specialist, coming to check on his intern's case. He didn't find it troublesome at all and readily agreed. He asked for the location, and Leo said a car would be arranged. Dr. Shin said he needed to go home to get his medical bag first. Since Leo was already out in the suburbs, it would take a while to get there anyway. Dylan Sloan insisted they stay for the barbecue he had planned for the afternoon. You couldn't send people off to work on an empty stomach. He would man the grill himself, he promised. It would be quick. And surprisingly, Dylan, the professional freeloader, had an incredible talent for cooking. Grilling was his art. As he spoke about the different cuts of meat, his face and eyes lit up. You'd almost think he built the entire equestrian ranch, just so he'd have an excuse to host barbecues. Leo tried some of the grilled meat. It was genuinely excellent. He was amazed by these kids. They all had it so easy, yet each one had a unique skill. This ranch owner, with his massive property, was personally grilling for them, and he was the best cook there. The lamb skewers, in particular, were perfect. The gamey flavor was present, but not overpowering. Even Shelley, who was from the Northwest and had high standards for lamb, ate her fill. The fat-to-meat ratio was ideal. The rendered fat coated the lean meat perfectly without being greasy or charred. You could easily eat 20 skewers. Dylan grilled with intense focus. Ryan Hahn felt like he was in a surreal dream. What was happening? The Dylan Sloan, he remembered, was the epitome of ADC. Playboy, always surrounded by at least 4 influencer types who all looked vaguely the same. He was the picture of arrogant, handsome wealth. And now, here he was, suit jacket sleeves rolled up, expertly flipping lamb skewers like some kind of grill master. It was so bizarre, it was almost heartbreaking. Damn, this barbecue was delicious. If Dylan ever decided to quit the ranch business, he could totally become a TikTok grilling influencer. It wasn't just Dylan. Connor was acting as his sous chef. The tyrant himself was running plates, delivering cooked meat to everyone. Ryan, his mouth full of delicious food, wondered what he'd done to deserve this. Had D.C.'s elite undergone a seismic cultural shift while he was away? He remembered a time when these guys wouldn't even bend over to pick up their own credit cards if they dropped them. Of course, Leo and his friends weren't just sitting there. They all pitched in. That was the beauty of a barbecue. Everyone participated, which made the food taste even better. During the meal, Connor observed that while Leo seemed friendly and approachable, he was actually an incredibly picky eater. If something wasn't perfectly fresh or to his liking, he'd take one bite and leave the rest. His standards were even higher than Liam's. Connor mentally filed that away. Test material. The setting sun cast a warm glow over the fields as smoke rose from the grill. In the distance, horses swished their tails. A nearby river gurgled peacefully. The thick, yellowed grass felt like a giant carpet. This was what outdoor dining was all about. Everyone was tired and hungry from riding, and they ate with gusto. The meal was a moment of profound self-reflection for Alex Young. His perception was sharper than his do-nothing cousins. Though he didn't know these D.C. Guys, personally, his family's influence was regional, not yet national. He knew this was an invaluable networking opportunity. Seeing these second and third generation heirs up close, Alex was struck by their humility. Back home, the local rich kids were arrogant and entitled. It seemed the smaller the pond, the bigger the ego. Here, Connor, Dylan, and even Liam were all capable of rolling up their sleeves. Alex had subtly pieced together the hierarchy. Liam's family, Connor's family, greater than or equal to Dylan's family. It was an unspoken, intuitive feeling. His own cousin, Ryan, wasn't even on the food chain. Leo, unaware of Liam's status, had enthusiastically taught him to ride, and Liam had eagerly learned. Jordan had clearly picked up on the power dynamic and was subtly charming Liam. Sean just kept filming, a silent observer. Leo probably figured it out eventually, but his natural warmth never wavered. He treated everyone the same, putting them all at ease. Leo was the glue holding the whole group together, balancing the complex social dynamics. Without him, the rigid pecking order of these legacy kids might have made things incredibly awkward. Alex didn't take their politeness for granted. He mentally scolded himself for his own occasional arrogance. He had to learn from Leo, from that rare and genuine affability. In a world of 1,000 schemes, sincerity was the ultimate trump card. Jordan was a good model too. He never asked for anything, so he was always relaxed and fun to be around. Alex wanted a career in politics, but he couldn't afford to be too transactional. True strength came from within. It was a fulfilling afternoon. Alex had improved his writing, sharpened his social skills, and expanded his network. Jordan just ate well and had fun. Sean filmed, observing. His lens was primarily focused on Leo, but he noticed how Leo naturally became the center of any group. It was strange, but the camera didn't lie. He couldn't help but capture the others, too. He made sure to ask if they wanted their faces blurred if he posted the video. He could feel the difference in their presence, something that was starkly obvious through the camera. Without the lens, he wouldn't have noticed. Hanging out with them, he felt a little intimidated. Thankfully, his job was just to film. He found Ryan, Alex's cousin, to be the most approachable, the most like himself. There was something about looking at people through a camera that revealed the truth. Maybe it was the focus, the way it framed a person and magnified every detail, their clothes, their accessories, their mannerisms. A normal person might pick their teeth or flick their tongue, but these guys, raised with strict etiquette, never did. The details made Sean more reserved, but not insecure. He focused on his work, fascinated by the power of his lens. It could tell a story. It could pierce through the surface to find reality. Shelley had a great time, too. She realized that not every connection had to be romantic. Being around Leo, treating him like family, was so much easier. There was no jealousy, no guessing games. It was just a comfortable, reliable bond. She had come to terms with her feelings for him. The affection was still there, but it was relaxed now, a source of comfort rather than stress. Leo gained 2 points in intelligence. He was now on par with Connor and Alex, though they had decades more life experience. He didn't come off as naive, but he wasn't calculating either. He just had that natural charm. And when it came to integrity, both Alex and Connor ranked lower than him. In terms of vibe, they were off the charts. Ambitious people always are. Being around people who so thoroughly outmatched you in every way, who wanted you to be happy, was an incredibly pleasant, almost hypnotic experience. The meal was a resounding success. Dylan felt he'd solidified his position. He'd fed the tyrant, given him a VIP card, and invited him to come ride anytime. He planned to offer Liam a partnership stake in the ranch. Better to give a piece to the tyrant, who had a certain code of honor, than lose it all to some corporate vulture. He was also deeply grateful to Connor, promising him a favor. Finally, he presented VIP cards to Leo and his friends. But Dylan had a special gift in mind for Leo. If he managed to save his ranch, it would be because of him. And he knew Leo wasn't just some college kid. The way the tyrant deferred to him, the way he picked at his food, this was a young man from an extraordinary background. As the barbecue wound down, Dylan made his move. "Leo, I hear your TikTok is blowing up," he said casually. "Today's footage is great advertising for the ranch. As a thank you, I'd like to give you a horse." Leo quickly waved his hands. No, thank you, Dylan. Today was great. You've been too generous. Besides, even if you gave me a horse, where would I keep it? I'm still in school." Dylan slapped his forehead. He hadn't thought of that. He'd have to give him a stable near Northwood State. He was pretty sure he had business contacts there. They hadn't been drinking. The sunset glowed as they departed. Connor still drove Shelley home. Even if there was no romantic interest, he was a gentleman. He made sure the driver kept the car steady and escorted her all the way to her door. Shelley thought Connor was a very thoughtful person, but almost too much so. It was a little exhausting, like being around a parent. She felt more relaxed with Ryan. Still, it was nice to be taken care of so thoroughly. After dropping her off, Connor sat back in the car and sent the day's photos and videos to his cousin, Audrey. He asked if she was feeling better. A voice note came back immediately. I wish I was there. My idol looks so handsome on a horse. He must be even better looking in person. Connor texted back, be a rational fan. Pat, meanwhile, Alex and his crew were heading back. Alex took the wheel of the G-Wagon. At this hour, traffic would be bad, and if Ryan made a couple of wrong turns, they'd be stuck for hours. Ryan, assuming his cousin was just eager to drive his new prize, magnanimously relinquished the driver's seat. Alex sighed. Ryan's cluelessness was, in its own way, charming. In the back, Sean had fallen asleep. Riding and filming was physically demanding. He needed to rest up so he could edit the TikTok videos. Ideally, he'd have tomorrow's video done tonight, but rarely worked out that way. He always felt the newest content was the most relevant. After the video of Leo singing on Ember Street went viral, Sean had posted a follow-up about the art exhibition and the donation. As expected, it blew up too. The contrast was irresistible. One day, he was a soulful singer, the next a renowned young painter donating over $1 million. They had successfully ridden the wave of fame and were now surfing a tsunami. The news had hit the mainstream media, though it wasn't a top headline. Celebrity donations were too common to be shocking anymore. But on TikTok, it was different. This was their roommate. At the same time, Northwood State University's official website reposted the news. Northwood State proudly congratulates our student, Leo Foster, on his successful exhibition. His philanthropic spirit is an inspiration to us all. Our university's own student aid program has assisted 1,179 students to date. They included a link to the program, encouraging students in need to apply. It was a savvy move, leveraging Leo's fame to boost the university's image. President Grant wasn't worried about getting calls from other university presidents. A school's reputation is built step by step. You can't blame others for trying when you're not. Previously, some faculty had grumbled about the $5,000 monthly stipend she'd approved for the TikTok account, calling it a waste of money. Now, they were silent. The kid had just donated over $1 million. He clearly didn't need their chump change. But because the president had acted first, she'd built goodwill. Offering him $5,000 a month now would be an insult. Leo sat in a government vehicle. The chassis was high, offering a great view, but the ride was anything but comfortable. He'd seen cars like this in movies. The passengers always sat with ramrod straight posture. Now he understood why. If you slouched, the bumps were 10 times worse. The driver was steady, piloting the vehicle like a tank. Traffic seemed apart for them, other cars instinctively yielding. Just by being in this car, Leo could feel the palpable presence of power. It was the most profound lesson the capital had to offer. Here, money didn't always talk, but power screamed. The owner of a multi-million-dollar ranch had to grovel before a kid half his age. Leo, you can get some rest. It's a bit of drive. I'll wake you when we're there, Liam said, his demeanor surprisingly docile. Initially, Liam had just liked Leo's face. But after spending time with him, he recognized that Leo had real substance. The tyrant, for all his arrogance, respected genuine ability. That's why he was polite to Connor. Dylan Sloan, with his constant stream of influencer gossip, was barely on his radar. And Ryan Hahn was a non-entity. Leo was tired. Socializing could be draining. He closed his eyes, but it was impossible to relax in this car. He remembered the breathing exercise his godfather had taught him, one you could do while seated. Dr. Shun claimed it was his own invention. Years ago, when he was paralyzed, Dr. Shun had developed his own method of breathing and meditation. It was a dark, desperate time. He'd clung to a tattered copy of a classic medical text, trying to will his body to respond. He couldn't move his legs, couldn't feel them. He would lie there for hours, trying to visualize his own circulatory and nervous systems, hoping to mentally reconnect the pathways to his limbs. He imagined his body as a network, and he slowly, painstakingly, tried to extend his consciousness down to his feet. Over time, he developed a routine of breathing and internal visualization. It sounds like mysticism, but it's not. If you quiet your mind, you can feel the energy flowing within your own body. His godfather had called it Dr. Shun's mindful restoration technique. Leo figured a man as brilliant as Dr. Shun wouldn't be peddling nonsense. He had nothing better to do, so he closed his eyes and gave it a try. As he began, the system's familiar interface appeared, providing a perfect guide. Dr. Shun had said the hardest part was finding the initial thread of energy. Most people couldn't quiet their minds enough. But for Leo, the guide was a brightly lit path. He simply followed it. Liam, who had been playing a game on his phone, glanced over. He saw Leo sitting perfectly still, not leaning back, yet completely stable despite the car's motion. His breathing was even, as if he were asleep, and an aura of profound calm emanated from him. Leo opened his eyes and took a long, deep breath. He could feel the city's polluted air, but his body was warm and buzzing. It actually worked. A mechanical chime echoed in his mind. Host has successfully completed one session of Dr. Shun's mindful restoration technique. Due to the host's focused, undistracted state, achieving a state of profound tranquility on the first attempt, the host is rewarded with lifespan plus 0.1. This technique regulates mood, soothes the spirit, and promotes longevity. Whoa! Had his godfather stumbled upon some ancient, forgotten practice? Leo realized it wasn't as simple as it looked. He could literally see the pathways in his mind. Without that guide, trying to visualize it correctly would have taken 1,000 failed attempts. No wonder Dr. Shun had trouble teaching it. Liam, raised in a military family, was keenly observant. He knew something had shifted in Leo's state. "What were you just doing?" he asked, curious. "A wellness exercise my teacher taught me," Leo said. "It works really well. Want to learn?" Liam shook his head. "Nah, not for me. I can't sit still. But you looked really peaceful. Can you teach it to my grandfather? He's in bed or chair all day. He seems so tired. I just want him to feel a little more comfortable." Dr. Shun abandoned the shopping trip with his wife to go supervise his godson. But the car that picked him up from their Georgetown townhouse felt wrong. Everything about it was wrong. He'd assumed Leo was doing a massage for a regular friend. But this was no regular friend. The car took a circuitous route through the city, and he realized he wasn't just chaperoning his godson. He was being escorted, by virtue of his godson, into the orbit of another D.C. heavyweight. Dr. Shun was a good doctor, but in a city teeming with power players, he was a nobody. The only reason he was in D.C. at all was to do a follow-up visit with an old patient, a former official. It was a courtesy call, a continuation of an old relationship. But breaking into the D.C. market? Impossible. In the capital, they didn't care where you came from. They cared who you knew. And now, in his old age, his godson was inadvertently opening doors for him. It was a complete role reversal. He thought he was the one guiding the kid, but it turned out he was the one being led. They arrived at a heavily guarded private estate in McLean. Sentries at every turn. Leo was becoming numb to it. The first time, his palms had been sweating. The second time was much easier. He was even able to chat with Liam about the game he was playing on his phone. It wasn't a game Leo had ever seen before, a complex battle simulation that looked suspiciously like a wargaming exercise. Different opening moves led to vastly different outcomes, a dizzying array of variables. Leo knew Liam was in military school, but this was next level. He watched Liam play around, fascinated. Every choice was a test, requiring not just tactical knowledge, but an understanding of psychology, geography, and international politics. "You're incredible," Leo said sincerely when they arrived. "No wonder they call you the tyrant." That last move was like a T-Rex descending from the heavens. Totally unexpected, completely devastating. Amazing. A faint blush crept up Liam's fair cheeks. He hated the nickname, but hearing it from Leo, it sounded like a compliment. "You're too kind, Leo. I'm not that good. I just got lucky with that last move. That game looks insanely difficult. I'd be paralyzed by all the choices. You're so decisive. It's really impressive." People praised Liam for his family, for his grandfather. No one had ever praised him. His grandfather had once told him he had a unique strategic eye, an ability to make snap decisions on a chaotic battlefield. For a moment, Liam liked Leo even more. Not only was he a good teacher, he gave the best compliments. They had arrived. Dr. Shun was already there, his own car having arrived just moments before. He stepped out and felt his own knees go a little weak. The young men standing guard were built like brick walls, radiating vitality. The patient inside must be gravely ill. In his experience, tough, stoic men like that rarely get sick. They just push through the pain. When they finally succumb, it's always something serious. He understood now why they'd sought out his godson. The family was clearly powerful, and the patient's condition was urgent. He had done a massage for the old mister. Preston that morning, and by the afternoon, this family had found him. The powerful run impacts. Dr. Shun steeled himself. The first thing Leo noticed upon entering the house was the ceiling height. It was immense. A normal room is maybe 9, 10 feet high. This felt like two acrobats standing on each other's shoulders with room to spare. The cavernous space was filled with more of the same powerfully built men. Leo felt like 10 of him couldn't take down one of them. The math joke he'd heard once about P18.I popped into his head. How much do you add to 8 to get 9? The answer is 10. The gap between an 8 and a 9 felt just as vast. Then he saw Liam's grandfather, and the contrast was jarring. The man was skeletal, a bag of bones. Dr. Shin was already there, speaking quietly with General Ingram, who was lying in a sophisticated hospital bed. Despite his condition, the room was immaculate, a testament to the quality of his care. He had once been a large man. You could see it in his frame, but his face was gaunt. When Liam entered the room, his usually boisterous energy vanished. He walked softly, his voice a whisper. The general himself had come to terms with his illness, but Liam hadn't. He couldn't reconcile the image of his grandfather, a titan, a man who could hold up the sky, with the frail figure in the bed. With every passing day, he watched the life drain away like sand in an hourglass. His eyes turned red just looking at him. Grandpa, this is my friend, Leo Foster. He's amazing at massage, and he knows this incredible wellness exercise. He taught me how to ride a horse today. I thought maybe he could teach you. Liam's words came out in a rush, a habit from his childhood that reappeared whenever he was nervous. He was young, healthy, vibrant. He couldn't comprehend his grandfather's weakness, and he refused to accept it. This refusal, this fight against the inevitable, is what people call growing up. He had grasped at a sliver of hope and dragged Leo here. Even if it was useless, he had to try. Even a moment of relief for his grandfather would be worth it. He knew his grandfather was in constant pain. The man who never flinched now winced when he smiled. Dr. Shun, the seasoned physician, had assessed the situation the moment he walked in. From the general's complexion and the faint scent of medicine in the air, he knew it was serious. They were chatting, but the general would frequently pause, his brow furrowing. His mind was sharp, his breathing steady. It was lung cancer, Dr. Shin deduced, most likely metastasized to the bones. The pain must be excruciating. It was the kind of pain that would make a person lose their mind. Yet the general bore it with only a slight pause in his speech. I actually enjoy having people to talk to, the general told Dr. Shun. They all worry I'll get tired, tell me to rest. I'll have plenty of time to rest when I'm gone. Leo approached, greeted his godfather, and then turned to the general. It's an honor to meet you, General Ingram. The general shook his head. Liam likes you. You're his age. Call me Grandpa. It's good to meet you, Grandpa Ingram, Leo said, his voice steady. The general first asked about his grandson's riding lesson. Liam launched into an excited, rambling account of the afternoon. From the torrent of words, the old general gleaned 3 key facts. Someone had led Liam to the ranch. Leo was an excellent rider, and Leo was a gifted teacher. He knew his grandson's temperament, proud, impatient, and quick to anger. Yet he was genuinely willing to be taught by this young man. That, in itself, was a miracle. Even if this boy couldn't do a thing for him physically, the general was glad his grandson had found a friend like him. Leo's eyes were clear, his demeanor calm and upright. He would be a good influence. His grandson was the one thing the old general couldn't leave behind in peace. He had his own affairs in order. He was ready. Leo, too, felt a sense of calm settle over him. He'd learned from watching his godfather that morning. No wasted words. Get to work. Grandpa Ingram, Leo said, his tone respectful but direct. Let's have my godfather check your pulse first. As Dr. Shin was taking the general's pulse, the door opened quietly. A man who looked like an older, more imposing version of Liam entered the room. It was immediately clear where the general's genes had gone. Secretary Ingram came in, and seeing his son with these strangers, he had to suppress the urge to yell. His father was in this state, and his spoiled son was still causing trouble. But you don't discipline your child in front of guests. He held his tongue. Before he could say anything, General Ingram shot him a look. If you want to stay, sit down and be quiet. If you can't, then leave. Don't be rude to my grandson's friends. Secretary Ingram sat down next to his son, fuming. Dr. Shin finished his diagnosis. The general's pulse was as taut as a violin string. The signs were clear: severe pain, blocked energy, blood stagnation, and a deeply depleted life force. The family hadn't asked for a prescription. They just wanted a massage. The room already smelled of strong medication. They weren't about to change treatments now. Dr. Shin turned to Leo. The general has severe pain in his back, and his bones are very brittle. Be extremely gentle. Avoid the primary tumor area and focus on the acupressure points to regulate his energy and relieve the pain. Leo had been shocked when he first saw the general. He was grateful he had the foresight to bring his godfather. He'd expected something like Dr. Croft's case, sore muscles from overwork. This was something else entirely. It was like trying to patch a gaping wound with a single Band-Aid. He felt his legs tremble slightly. The intimidating man who had just entered the room wasn't helping. He looked like a storm cloud in a suit. But a system task was a system task. With his godfather there, he felt a surge of confidence. He nodded, washed his hands, and took the clean cloth Dr. Shen offered him. Secretary Ingram had assumed the older man would be the one performing the massage. When he saw the boy, barely older than his own son, step forward, he opened his mouth to object. A single glare from his father silenced him. Liam leaned over and whispered, "Dad, chill. Leo just saw Mr. Preston this morning, and he's going back for a follow-up tomorrow. I had to pull a lot of strings to get him here. Don't say anything until you know what you're talking about." You could have left out that last part, Secretary Ingram thought, but he stayed quiet. Leo began tuning out the others. He worried his touch would be too rough. As he placed his hands on the general, he was struck by how frail he was. The man was all bone, his skin stretched taut over his frame. "It's all right, son," the general rasped. "Don't worry. You can't break what's already broken." Leo took a deep breath. "Grandpa Ingram, some of this might be uncomfortable. If it hurts, please say so. Don't hold it in." Voicing the pain is part of the release, part of the treatment. From the corner, Secretary Ingram, his face still a thunderous mask, nodded slightly in approval. His father was too proud, too stoic. Leo started at the feet, working his way up through a series of acupressure points. He used a delicate, suspended force, like a calligrapher's brush, his wrist hovering so that only his fingertips made contact. The general's bones were too fragile for any real pressure. It was exhausting work. The room was kept cool for the general's comfort, but sweat beaded on Leo's forehead. At first, the general continued to chat, his words punctuated by long pauses. Gradually, the pauses grew longer. His eyes drifted shut. A soft, gentle breath escaped his lips. He was asleep. Dr. Shen was by Leo's side, wiping his brow with a cloth, offering him sips of warm water. The massage was long and painstaking. Leo knew if he stopped, the general would wake instantly. He continued his gentle, rhythmic pressure, coaxing the old man into a deeper sleep than he'd known in months. Hearing his father's steady, quiet breathing, Secretary Ingram tilted his head back, his eyes welling with tears. He stared at the high ceiling until they receded. After nearly an hour, Leo finally released the pressure. The general's eyes fluttered open. They were cloudy, unfocused. It took a moment for him to register his surroundings. "I was asleep," he murmured, a note of wonder in his voice. And for a little while, it didn't hurt at all. That was nice. The general's vision was blurry. After so long without proper sleep, waking up felt like looking through a film. He worried he was going blind. At his stage, any system could fail without warning. But he kept it to himself, not wanting to upset his son and grandson. Dr. Shen, however, noticed. He retrieved a small bottle of eye drops from his bag. His patients were often elderly officials with similar issues. He had the general close his eyes and administer a drop in each. When the general opened them again, the world was clear and cool. Liam was there with a tissue, gently dabbing the corners of his eyes. The general could see his grandson, his son, Leo, Dr. Shen, all of them, perfectly. He gave a weak, wry smile. "Scared me for a second there. Thought my eyes had finally given up." "Your eyes are fine, General," Dr. Shen said. "Sharp as ever. You're just exhausted. This is a simple borneal solution. Costs about $2 a bottle. You can use it whenever your eyes feel dry, up to 3 times a day." Secretary Ingram's heart ached. His father, the man who hadn't blinked when a bullet grazed his temple, was now afraid of going blind because he hadn't slept. The general, however, laughed at Dr. Shen's bluntness. They'd run a background check, of course. Dr. Stephen Shen was known for being direct and unpretentious. He didn't treat him like a general, just a patient. $2. The man was worried about his patient's finances. For him, medical expenses were a non-issue, but he appreciated the gesture. Dr. Shen didn't use the most expensive treatments. He used the most appropriate ones. Leo saw that the general's state had improved, but he couldn't come here every day. This was a temporary fix, not a cure. He was just a student with a knack for massage. What more could he do? He took a breath. "Grandpa Ingram, that was just acupressure. It helped you sleep, but the points will be sore tomorrow, and you can't overdo it. While you have some energy, I'd like to teach you a routine my godfather created. It's called Dr. Shen's mindful restoration technique. You can do it lying down. He developed it himself when he was paralyzed for several years as a young man. Look at him now. Dr. Shin watched, relieved that the massage was over without incident. He'd been genuinely worried. Then he heard Leo mention the routine. He himself had found it effective, but modern people were too restless. No one had the patience for it. It was like Qigong. Everyone agrees it's good for you, but almost no one actually does it. He tried to teach it to his students, but they just humored him. He'd given up, but he wouldn't undermine his godson. He remembered his own time in bed, the feeling of helplessness. It was a living death, not unlike the general's current state. Secretary Ingram almost spoke up to protest, but the fact that his father had actually slept was nothing short of a miracle. He was skeptical, but at this point, he was willing to try anything. When a loved one is sick, you become desperate. You'd listen to a snake oil salesman if he promised a cure, just for the sliver of hope. Leo wasn't paying attention to anyone else's reactions. He was focused on the general. Just then, a chime sounded in his head. Host has diligently completed the massage task, allowing the target to enjoy 34 minutes of deep sleep and reducing pain by 1 level. The host has received the target's sincere gratitude and blessing. Reward: lifespan plus 1 year. Intermediate permanent buff: master instructor. Once activated, host can systematically guide others in learning, enabling them to grasp key concepts and compelling them to focus for at least 1 hour. Leo glanced at his own stats. Lifespan: 21/62. 1/110. Current age / projected lifespan / max lifespan. Well, that brings retirement a little closer. The general, feeling a rare surge of energy, nodded. I'm tired of lying here all day. It's good to have something to do. Let's learn, Mr. Foster. Leo didn't ask for incense or mood lighting. A strong scent would probably send the general into a coughing fit. The room was already cool and clinical, an environment of low stimulation, like a server farm. To learn the technique properly, you needed a quiet, well-ventilated space. Unless you were Leo Foster, now equipped with a new buff and an almost supernatural ability to focus. He didn't realize it, but his concentration had improved tenfold. He no longer procrastinated or got distracted. When he started something, he was locked in. The general was already in comfortable clothing. Leo began. Grandpa Ingram, don't be nervous. This isn't a difficult test. We can talk. You can ask questions. Everyone else, please remain quiet for now. Secretary Ingram shot a look. Is everyone else me? Liam stifled a laugh. First, close your eyes and regulate your breath. In through your nose, out through your mouth. 3 times. Clear your mind. Leo's voice was calm and clear, and the others in the room felt an involuntary urge to follow his instructions. Leo placed a hand gently on the general's. Now, internal visualization. Imagine your consciousness is like a jellyfish, with countless soft tentacles reaching out to every part of your body. If you can't picture a jellyfish, think of something familiar. What's the first thing that comes to mind? The general's voice was slow. Corn. Corn silk. When I was a boy, I'd walk through the fields, and there was so much of it. You could never get it all off when you ate the cob. Secretary Ingram almost choked. His formidable, decorated father was visualizing. Corn silk? He quickly remembered he was supposed to be quiet. What was he thinking of? He tried to picture a jellyfish, but found the idea unsettling. Instead, his mind drifted to the candied sweet potatoes his mother used to make, the long, sugary threads stretching from the bowl. Liam thought of the color-coded flight path from his wargaming simulator, a complex web spreading across a map. Corn silk is excellent, Leo affirmed, not missing a beat. Corn silk tea is a traditional remedy. It's good for inflammation, blood pressure, blood sugar. He remembered Alex drinking it for a while. It tasted awful. Now, imagine your breath is like those threads of corn silk flowing through your body. Start at your head and work your way down. Don't rush. Leo guided him slowly, his rhythm perfect. He had the system's movement correction and tempo control. An experienced practitioner could do this instantly, but a beginner needed guidance. He had the general raise his hands above his head, inhaling, then lowering them, exhaling, visualizing pure energy entering and impurities leaving. Now extend the visualization down from your head to your navel, and continue further. Beside him, Secretary Ingram imagined his sugary sweet potato threads reaching his navel. It was surprisingly effective. Past your core, nourishing your organs, down to your legs, your thighs, your calves, your toes. Leo's voice was a steady, clear guide. He would gently tap the general's hand at each checkpoint. Normally, a person in the general's weakened state would find it impossible to maintain focus. The thread of concentration would snap. But under Leo's buff-enhanced guidance, he was held in a state of deep focus for over half an hour. When they opened their eyes, It felt like only a few minutes had passed, but the clock on the wall showed that nearly an hour had gone by. A faint flush of color had returned to the general's cheeks. Secretary Ingram felt strangely invigorated, like he could pull an all-nighter of budget meetings. He had actually felt the imaginary sweet potato threads warming his feet. Liam's face was red, his energy buzzing. Dr. Shun watched in amazement. Had everyone in the room actually learned the technique? He hadn't participated, too focused on supervising. He couldn't understand how it had worked so well. Outside, the general's medical team was growing anxious. They hadn't heard a sound in almost an hour. They worried the old man had taken a turn for the worse. When the family was all gathered, it was often a sign of the end. Leo saw the change in the general's expression. Grandpa Ingram, he asked gently, do you need to use the restroom? Secretary Ingram started to stand, ready to call for the nurses and clear the room. He hadn't helped his father with such things. The old man was too proud. He wouldn't want his son to see him so helpless. But before he could move, Leo spoke again. Grandpa Ingram, I'll help you. Let's try to stand up and take a few steps. Let's walk to the bathroom. Leo was exhausted. Secretary Ingram himself drove him back, with his driver at the wheel. They dropped Dr. Shun off at his Georgetown townhouse first, then continued on to the Ritz-Carlton where Leo was staying. Really, sir, you don't have to do this, Leo thought. Your presence is making it impossible for me to relax. Back at the estate, when Leo had told the general to stand up, the old man hadn't believed it was possible. For months, every attempt to get out of bed had been an agonizing, exhausting struggle that left him drenched in sweat and utterly defeated. The despair had been crushing. Too many disappointments had eroded his hope. But the young man's words were so confident, and they sounded familiar, like a line from a famous old comedy sketch where a con man convinces a healthy person they need a crutch. Get up, walk a few steps. The memory made the general want to smile. He looked to Dr. Shun for confirmation. The doctor, incredibly, nodded in encouragement. The general moved his foot. He responded. It was a small, simple movement, but for a man who had been bedridden for so long, it was a seismic event. Slowly, painstakingly, he pushed himself up. He waved off any help, his pride still intact. Leo stood close, ready to catch him, his own strength a silent guarantee. Dr. Shun was confident in this. He'd seen the video of Leo hauling Shelley back onto a moving horse. The boy was deceptively strong. Liam and his father watched, frozen with a mixture of terror and hope. They were useless, paralyzed by their love. And then, the general was standing. Leo offered a light, steadying hand. After the visualization, you need to stand and walk to complete the circuit to ground the energy. How do you feel, Grandpa Ingram? The general took a deep, shuddering breath. I think I can walk a few steps. At that, Secretary Ingram, his face pale with shock, finally broke and called for the doctors and nurses. The medical team rushed in, expecting the worst. They found the general on his feet. They were dumbfounded. They thought he was on his deathbed, not taking a stroll to the bathroom. Was this some bizarre, final surge of energy? The general's personal physician, a Dr. Howell, saw Dr. Shun and understood. Stephen, he said, shaking his head, you're a man of hidden talents. It wasn't me, Dr. Shun said, gesturing to Leo. It was all him. Could you be any more infuriating? Dr. Howell thought, but he politely greeted the young man. With the general taken care of, Dr. Shun pulled Leo toward the door. It was late. The general needed a rest. The car ride was excruciatingly silent. Secretary Ingram was a man of immense presence, but few words. Dr. Shun, a brilliant doctor, was socially awkward and had no idea how to make small talk with a cabinet secretary. He eventually filled the silence by recounting the origin of his mindful restoration technique, ending with an offer to have his notes copied for the secretary. Thank you, Secretary Ingram said. Then more silence. Leo felt like his toes were going to dig a hole through the floor mats. He wished he could just get out and walk. Finally, Secretary Ingram turned to him. Leo instinctively wanted to adjust a pair of non-existent glasses. You're still a student, Mr. Foster. Yes, Secretary Ingram. I'm here with my professor for an art exhibition. I'll be heading back to school once it's over. The silence returned, thick and heavy. Leo decided to take the initiative. If General Ingram needs it, I can come back twice more before I leave. A course of 3 sessions is usually best, but any more than that in a short time wouldn't be helpful. He can practice the visualization technique once a day, and if he can walk a little each time, it will help with the pain. But you should tell him it won't always be successful. He has to be patient. I understand, Secretary Ingram said. Mr. Foster, Liam is very fond of you. He rarely looks up to his peers. I worry about him. He's impulsive and has never faced any real hardship. His grandfather's illness has hit him hard. I hope his rather abrupt approach didn't startle you. Not at all. Liam is smart and decisive. He's a good kid. You don't have to worry, sir. Secretary Ingram looked at the young man before him. Not much older than his own son. How could he possibly repay him? He'd seen the background check. Godson and apprentice to Dr. Shun, a brilliant painter whose first exhibition had earned millions, all of which he donated. Money was useless. Fame was useless. Power was useless. But the secretary was a man of accounts. A debt had been incurred. His father had been given a respite from pain, a peaceful sleep, and a moment of dignity. A simple thank you was an insult. Of course, Leo thought, if you offer me a check, I'd take it. I'm actually broke. But the media had painted him as some ethereal artist who floated above worldly concerns. At last, Secretary Ingram spoke. Liam is my only son. I'm often busy, and I haven't been the best father. He's lonely. He's always wanted a brother. He doesn't listen to anyone but his grandfather, and I worry what will happen when. He respects you. He sees you as an older brother. Please, don't call me secretary. Call me uncle. Think of yourself as part of the family. Come over anytime. I'll have Liam bring you by to properly meet everyone. As he spoke, the system chimed. Host has diligently taught Dr. Shin's mindful restoration technique to 3 individuals, receiving their sincere gratitude. Reward, growth plus 0. 3 cm, can be applied to any part of the body. Leo, now officially 5'9". 1 foot, felt a wave of relief. It had been a while since his last growth spurt. Seeing the boy's slightly dazed expression, the secretary thought, he's a true academic. A bit awkward, but that's to be expected from someone so gifted. He will make sure to look out for him in the future. Leo processed the reward and replied smoothly, of course, Uncle Ingram. They had arrived at the hotel. Secretary Ingram got out of the car as well. Standing on the curb, the imposing 6'4" man placed a hand on Leo's shoulder. You know, you're just like Liam. Not big enough, not tall enough. This winter break, why don't you two join a military training camp? Toughen you up. Maybe you'll even grow a bit. Leo, who had just gained a precious 1/10 of an inch, could only manage a tight smile. Thank you, Uncle. Leo got back to the hotel just as Alex's cousin was leaving. Ryan had been glued to Sean's side, begging for editing lessons. Sean, not really knowing how to teach editing, just did his thing while Ryan watched intently over his shoulder. And to his credit, despite the dizzying speed of Sean's workflow, Ryan had actually managed to follow along. But it was getting late, so Leo's return was Ryan's cue to head out. On his way down, Ryan spotted an incredible car pulling up to the entrance. No matter how far his family's fortunes had fallen, he'd grown up inside the Beltway and knew the pecking order of D.C. vehicles. Seeing a car of this caliber, he paused, his own car forgotten. He was curious which Titan was arriving. Was he about to stumble into something he shouldn't see? At this level, probably not. They wouldn't be so brazen. Just as his curiosity peaked, the driver's door opened, and the person who stepped out was Leo. What the? Ryan's jaw dropped. Was he finally seeing Leo's true identity? He instinctively snapped a photo with his phone. Then another person emerged from the back. Holy mother of. It was Secretary Ingram. Liam, the little tyrant Ingram's father. Secretary Ingram himself was seeing Leo out of the car, clapping him on the arm, and saying something. Leo just gave a casual, 2-word reply. Could Leo be Liam's long-lost half-brother? Ryan's mind raced, picturing a tangled web of family drama. The lives of the rich were truly a different world. When Leo walked over, Ryan stammered a hasty greeting and practically fled, leaving Leo completely bewildered by his bizarre exit. In their group chat, Leo messaged his roommates. Want me to grab any late-night food? Alex replied. Nah, we're still full from that barbecue this afternoon. Leo, I could use a drink, though. Alex, come to our room. Still got some beers and peanuts left from yesterday. Alex, ever the pragmatist, was also dying of curiosity. It wasn't that late, and they could have gone to the hotel's executive lounge, but the place was blanketed with security cameras. If they were going to talk, a private room was better. Leo went back to his room, grabbed Sean, and headed across the hall. The moment he walked in, he collapsed onto the couch in a starfish pose, letting out a long sigh before finally sitting up. Just seeing his roommates made him feel like he could breathe again, like he was back in his own world. At General Ingram's estate, he'd felt like he was on display, every move scrutinized. Now, with his friends, the tension melted away. The social pressure had been immense. Hanging out with just Liam had been fine. The kid was actually pretty fun, like a hyperactive younger cousin. He had that classic spoiled brat vibe, but you could reason with him. And after seeing the Ingram estate, Leo got it. If he'd grown up in that kind of environment, he'd be 100 times more insufferable. But dealing with the whole family was exhausting. It started with the subtle intimidation of the estate itself. The sheer scale and severe formality of the place put you on edge. Then there was the security. Everywhere you looked, at least a 10-to-1 ratio of guards to guests. And General Ingram himself, even weakened by illness, had an intensely powerful gaze that pinned you to the spot. Secretary Ingram, who'd arrived later, had the same sharp, appraising eyes. Leo used to think his high school principal was the most intimidating person on the planet. Compared to the Ingrams, she was a sweet old lady. Social anxiety was a strange thing. You could be in a crowd and feel completely out of place, wanting to shrink into a corner. Uncomfortable. But back with his roommates, everything felt right. The sense of ease with familiar people was amplified tenfold. His roommates were eager to hear about his experience. On the way back to the hotel, Alex's cousin had given them the full rundown on Liam Ingram, including his various glorious exploits. Alex had known Liam came from money, but he hadn't realized the kid was such a terror. Around them, he'd been perfectly polite and well-behaved. The stories Ryan told were wild. Like the time some girl, probably high on cheesy YA novels, threw herself in front of Liam's car. She was beautiful, the picture of damsel in distress innocence, and with Liam flanked by his massive security detail, anyone would have assumed it was his fault. But instead of letting his bodyguards handle it, Liam just calmly called the cops. After having one of his guards record the entire thing from the start. They weren't just muscle, after all. There were dozens of stories like that, mostly because his angelic boy-next-door looks were so deceiving. So when Leo had gone off alone with him, they'd been a little worried, sending him texts to check in. Of course, once Leo was with the general, he hadn't looked at his phone. It was a relief to know Dr. Shen had been there with him. Leo leaned back on the couch and cracked open a beer. None of them were heavy drinkers, but they could all handle a few beers. He couldn't exactly tell them about the general's medical condition. As Dr. Shen had pointed out, a patient's health was private. You wouldn't want your doctor posting pictures of your giant, round hemorrhoids for the world to see, had been his godfather's delicate phrasing. So Leo stuck to describing the estate. It was huge. The house felt more like a convention center. High ceilings, empty spaces, and security everywhere. Super intimidating. Honestly, it makes Liam seem like a pretty chill guy. If my family had that kind of power, I'd be way more of a jerk. Jordan snorted. Damn right. If I had that kind of pull, I'd probably kick every dog I passed on the street, just because I could. Sounds intense, Sean said, his voice laced with concern. You okay? He's fine, Alex cut in. If he wasn't, he wouldn't be melting into the couch like this. But the pressure must have been insane. Some people just have an aura that puts everyone on edge. The key is to stay level. At the end of the day, they're just people. They have their own wants and needs. You just have to act normal and not overthink it. Leo nodded. Alex was right. No matter who they were still human. He chatted with them for a while longer, telling them about the horse ranch and a barbecue. Then they discussed their plans. They had booked the trip for a week, and their return tickets were already set. D.C. was impressive, but it didn't feel like a place they belonged. Then Leo dropped the bomb, his voice barely a whisper. So, my godfather might have given me a condo. It's over by the Bridgeport Biotech campus. Maybe we can check it out when we have time. He was immediately buried under a pile of flailing limbs and playful punches. They wanted their friend to do well, but not that well. The nerve of this guy. It was a chaotic mess of wrestling, but everyone knew their limits. Leo, with his superior strength, easily lifted Jordan, who was trying to use his weight to pin him down. Eventually, they all ended up sprawled on the carpeted floor, catching their breath. Through the floor-to-ceiling window, the city pulsed with life. A river of headlights, towering skyscrapers, and a glittering tapestry of lights. They lay there for a while, just looking out at the view. We still haven't been to the altar of Earth, Sean said. Want to go tomorrow? I'd like to see the Smithsonian, too, Sean added, hands laced behind his head. But the lines are probably insane, and isn't it closed on Mondays? The pictures I've seen from inside are amazing. These last couple of days have been a lot for him to take in. Everything in the Capitol was new and foreign. But looking at this unfamiliar world through his camera lens, focused on the familiar faces of his friends, brought back a sense of comfort. His TikTok followers have been skyrocketing, so fast it felt like he was on the verge of going viral. It was a strange, heady feeling, like one of the skyscrapers shooting up from the ground. Jordan found it all novel, too. He was a rich kid, sure, but in D.C., he felt like a total country bumpkin. Seeing a guy as wealthy as Dylan Sloan, the ranch owner, have to grovel in front of someone with real power was a weird experience. No wonder his dad was always on his case about not having any ambition, pushing him to get a respectable government job. Too late for that now. If his dad was that desperate for a politician in the family, he could try for another kid. Jordan was a lost cause. Alex, however, felt it most deeply. The trip reinforced his drive to work hard, to climb higher, and to remain Leo's best friend for life. That was his main takeaway. There was something almost mystical about Leo's luck. Back in the dorm, Leo had always been the center of their group, with each of them feeling like they were his closest friend. It wasn't as obvious on campus, but out here it was clear Leo was still the center of gravity. He possessed an importance he himself didn't seem to recognize. And his luck was uncanny. He just kept stumbling into influential people who wanted to help him. Alex knew he didn't have that kind of charisma, but that was fine. As long as he stayed close to Leo, any good fortune that came Leo's way would indirectly benefit him. Alex was brutally pragmatic, maybe the most calculating of the four, but he was transparent about it. He weighed costs and benefits, but he never did it at the expense of others. He saw it as simple reality. No one was a saint. You might think you're a good person, but that's only because you don't have money. Give a poor man wealth, and he might become more ruthless, more snobbish, and more contemptuous than the people he once envied. We'll go by Leo's schedule tomorrow, Alex said. Whenever he's free, we'll head to the altar of Earth. Leo was eager to go. He'd read Daniel Vance's The View from a different altitude in the library and had even gotten the system's lifespan blessing from it. He felt a strange pull toward the place. Visiting a location after reading about it so deeply created a unique kind of connection. I'm busy in the morning and evening, Leo said, but I'm free in the afternoon. We can meet at the entrance then. Sound good, Alex said. We'll do our own thing in the morning and meet up for the altar in the afternoon. I'm heading to bed. Sean agreed. He had videos to edit. Jordan was fine with it, too. More time for gaming. Leo and Sean headed back to their room, leaving 4 empty beer cans in the trash. A good night's sleep left Leo feeling refreshed and full of energy. He and Stella had made plans the night before for a virtual run this morning. He'd be at the hotel gym, she'd be on campus, and they'd be on a video call. It was a slightly goofy ritual, the kind of thing reserved for couples in the dizzying early stages of a relationship, but neither of them saw anything wrong with it. When Leo woke up, Sean was already at his laptop. He'd had beer instead of coffee last night and had actually gone to bed at midnight. He was up early to edit. With Ryan watching him the previous evening, he hadn't been able to get into his usual flow. He wasn't used to having an audience. But Sean was too nice to say no. Ryan had been their chauffeur for the past couple of days, and Sean felt he owed him. He'd patiently walked Ryan through his process, step by step, which meant that despite editing all night, he hadn't gotten much done. Teaching took up most of the time. So now he was up at the crack of dawn, trying to catch up. Working while traveling was surprisingly efficient. The deadlines kept him focused. But Sean worried about the quality suffering, so he was careful not to overschedule their days. 1 major site per day was enough. They'd seen the monuments on the mall, and that alone was a huge check off his list. Edit in the morning, the altar of Earth in the afternoon. Perfect. There was another reason Sean was up so early. Once he hit the hotel's buffet breakfast, all productivity ceased. His brain and body would dedicate every available resource to the monumental task of digestion. He always ate too much at buffets, a holdover from a childhood where food was scarce. He just couldn't help himself. Leo didn't disturb him. He drank a glass of honey water, used the restroom, and headed down to the gym. The treadmill had a neat phone holder, a thoughtful touch for people who liked to stream shows while they ran. He set up his phone and video called Stella. She picked up almost immediately. She was already outside, the sky behind her a pale, pre-dawn gray. It looked a little chilly. She was wearing a white fleece pullover with a small, interlocking double C logo on the chest. Chanel. Stella seemed to have a thing for their clothes. She wore them often. Leo angled the camera at his own face. He'd chosen a treadmill in the corner to avoid bothering anyone and was wearing earbuds. "Are you cold?" he asked. "You're not wearing much." "We had a sudden heat wave," she said. "The temperature shot up almost 30 degrees. It feels like summer, but it's supposed to drop again tomorrow, just as fast. It'll be cold when you guys get back, so pack something warm." She was walking at a slow pace, and the wind gently tousled her hair. Hearing her slightly breathless voice through his earbuds sent an unexpected shiver through him, and his mind started to wander. He needed to focus. "Run." He told her he was starting, and she nodded. They switched to an audio call, as she was starting to run too, her phone strapped to her armband. They couldn't see each other, but they could hear the rhythm of each other's breathing. It was a silly, simple thing running together like this, but it made him incredibly happy, as if they were side by side on the same path. After his run, Leo was practically glowing, radiating the cheerful energy of a man in love. The hormonal rush left him looking bright and refreshed, his lips naturally red. He had an appointment this morning, so he didn't wake the others. He showered, changed, and went to get breakfast alone. Sean was still editing, planning to eat later with Alex and Jordan. The breakfast buffet was open until 10:30, so they could make it a brunch and skip lunch. After eating, Leo headed out. He'd chosen his outfit carefully, a white cashmere sweater, a khaki overcoat, and his trusty sneakers. Stella had picked out several complete outfits for him, even suggesting he bring different shoes, but packing multiple pairs seemed excessive. He'd opted for the comfortable white sneakers. They looked fine, and besides, if he was going to be called Dr. Foster, he felt like wearing white just fit the part. It looked clean and professional. There was a reason doctors wore white coats, partly psychological, as white conveyed a sense of peace and calm, and partly practical, as it made it easier to see and prevent the spread of germs and contaminants. It was also easier to bleach. Some traditions existed for a reason. You just had to trust the wisdom of those who came before you. He took a cab to Dr. Shin's hotel first. His godfather was brazenly skipping a conference meeting today, his excuse perfectly valid. He was just an attendee, not a speaker, so his absence wouldn't be missed. The secret to a stress-free life was that as long as you didn't want a promotion, your boss had no power over you. Compared to the new patient last night, today's visit was with one of Dr. Shun's former patients, so his godfather was much more relaxed. When Leo arrived, the car was already waiting. The patient's staff had offered to pick him up from his hotel, but Leo figured it was easier to meet Dr. Shun first, since their routes didn't overlap. It was better to go together. If things got awkward, at least they'd be awkward together. The winding roads of the private estate felt just as confusing as the night before, yet somehow different. The scenery seemed to shift. He was sure he hadn't seen that particular rock garden yesterday, but today there were two of them. The journey felt shorter this time, though. The first time is always disorienting. The second time is still disorienting, but at least you have a vague sense of what to expect. They met the old leader in a sunroom. It was filled with light, flowers, and potted plants, furnished with a tea table and lounge chairs like a beautifully curated conservatory. Apparently, there were no real secrets in a circle this small. The moment Dr. Shun arrived, the old leader beckoned him over. "Stephen, you're not a very generous friend," he said with a playful grumble. "You've been my doctor for years and never once taught me that special health routine of yours. I had to hear about it from old Ingram." Dr. Shun was at a loss. "I'm sure you already ran a background check on it. The routine is public domain, just like Qigong. Anyone can learn it. It's just not as famous." He knew the man was joking, but he had no idea how to respond. Should he joke back? You weren't sick enough to qualify? Of course, he only thought it. He wasn't an idiot. "It's a real routine," Dr. Shun said, finding a safe answer. "But whenever I've tried to teach it to others, they've had trouble learning it." The old leader laughed. "That's probably because you're not handsome enough, Stephen. Even doctors have to be easy on the eyes these days. My grandkids were telling me about some movie they saw. The villain was so hot, they said that they were rooting for him the whole time. Looks over logic. I'll have young Dr. Foster here teach me later. Maybe I'll have better luck." Dr. Shun stood there, speechless. "Did he just call me ugly?" "Of course," Leo said, stepping in. He felt for his godfather. The man was clearly not built for this kind of banter. His conversations tended to just end. It was time to get to work. When you put two introverts in a room, the less introverted one has to step up. "Sir, shall I start the massage?" Leo asked. The old leader smiled warmly. "You can call me Mr. Preston." Old Ingram couldn't stop singing your praises. That's nothing new. He's always had a soft spot for young people. But his son, Secretary Ingram, praised you too, and that's a rare thing indeed. He's usually quite stern with the younger generation. Leo asked when he had last eaten, and, learning it had been over half an hour ago, got straight to it. "All right, Mr. Preston, I'll begin." He activated the massage task, and his entire demeanor shifted. He went to work with a series of precise cracks and adjustments. He was using more force today. Mr. Preston's issues were mostly from wear and tear, the typical aches and pains of old age, not a life-threatening illness. As long as he followed the meridians, he could be firm. The physician standing nearby watched in horror. "Easy, son. For the love of God, be gentle. You're going to hurt him." Leo paid him no mind, applying calculated pressure. Old Mr. Preston let out a few muffled grunts, unable to hold them back, but a moment later, with another series of adjustments, he was fast asleep. This massage was simpler than the general's. When Leo finished, Mr. Preston remained asleep for another half an hour before his eyes slowly fluttered open. He let out a long, satisfied sigh, looking completely refreshed. The massage yesterday had already helped him sleep better than he had in ages. This extra nap had him feeling light and clear-headed. "I hear you're also quite the tea master, young man, mister," Preston said with a grin. "I'll contribute my prized Olympus gold for the occasion. How about we share a pot? If you like it, you could take some home with you." Leo, now a semi-initiate into the world of high-end tea, blinked. Olympus gold? He was momentarily stunned. Was this the legendary tea that was said to grant vitality and extend one's life? The one that cost more per gram than actual gold? A gram of gold was about $75. A gram of this tea was supposedly over 100. He remembered Joy Wren telling him about it, listing off the most exclusive teas in the country. Dragon's Robe was the most famous one on the market, but there were others, collector-grade teas that rarely saw the light of day. Olympus Gold was one of them. This was the kind of tea that could get a public official indicted. Professor Hoffman had a sunroom, too. But compared to this, his was a small, humble affair, good for watching movies, smoking cigars, drinking tea, and lounging. This sunroom was something else entirely. It had clearly been designed by a professional, with every angle offering a unique, curated view. Yet, it didn't feel stuffy like some greenhouses. The ventilation was superb. The overwhelming first impression was of sunlight, pouring in from every direction. Older people crave the sun, a deep-seated defense against the cold that settles in the bones. Leo remembered the old women who used to sit on chairs in front of the factory gates back home, soaking up the warmth. Time had passed, but whenever he walked by that spot, the image would return, a projection from a bygone era. He opened the tea canister and examined the leaves, trying to recall the tall tales Joy Wren had told him about Olympus Gold. It came from a grove of 1,000-year-old tea trees growing in the granite fissures of a mountain. Each tree grew in an extreme environment with an annual accumulated temperature of exactly 37 degrees. Leo, a soon-to-be college graduate who had taken physics but forgotten all of it, had asked Joy what that even meant. She'd explained, the trees grow in an inverse temperature layer above 13,000 feet, with a daily temperature swing of about 80 degrees Fahrenheit. Or maybe that's all marketing bullshit. The point is, it sounds impressive and difficult, like those special tea trees in the Jelagong Mountains that only get 37 minutes of direct sunlight a day, or the tundra plants in the Tangula Mountains with a 37-day metabolic cycle. The strategy was to use jargon that sounded professional, that consumers vaguely understood, but not completely, completing the loop of value affirmation in their effort to learn more. Right, Leo had thought. And the leaves have natural mica crystals and are rich in minerals. At the time, it was just a story. Now he was holding the real thing. With Mr. Preston's permission, he took a few photos of the canister and the leaves. Looking at them, he couldn't tell the difference. No visible minerals. The canister itself was plain, with just 3 words etched on it. Olympus Gold. It looked almost like a knockoff. The leaves were thick and had a clean, pure scent. But he could imagine the harvesting conditions were brutal, like the Indonesian workers who rappelled down cliffs to harvest birds' nests. The difficulty was part of the price. According to Joy, harvesting Olympus Gold was an ordeal. They used the triple dark harvest method, on the 3rd moon after the spring equinox, during the midnight dewfall period. The location was already treacherous, and they had to do it in the dead of night, collecting only the first budding sprouts. But this was a man of Mr. Preston's stature. The tea had to be authentic. Even if he couldn't tell the difference himself, he surely had people around him who could. It was just new to Leo. He filed it away as another lesson learned. The water at the estate was excellent. Leo first boiled some and poured everyone a glass. He took a sip himself. It was sweet and refreshing, as crisp as ice-cold spring water. The room was also scented with a faint, almost imperceptible trace of agarwood incense. It was a subtle fragrance, a blend of floral and medicinal notes that seemed to seep into his lungs, calming and pleasant. With his olfactory buff still active, the scent was more pronounced, and he found it deeply soothing. In this environment, with this tea, anyone who could operate a smartphone could probably brew a decent cup. Leo settled himself. He hadn't noticed it before, but when he prepared tea now, he fell into a natural, zen-like focus. It might have been from practicing Dr. Shun's mindful restoration technique the day before. He found it easier to center himself and enter a flow state. Previously, he had to give himself a little mental pep talk before starting a task. Ordinarily, if a group of people were just sitting in silence, it would be strange. But watching Leo prepare the tea was mesmerizing, like a gentle breeze washing over them. There was no need to constantly search for topics of conversation. A moment of quiet was perfectly comfortable. His movements were free of flamboyant gestures. No 3-turn cups or 6-pour elevations. He just brewed the tea with simple, focused precision, paying close attention to water temperature and steeping time. Green tea, light brew. Black tea, medium, poor, heavy. It was a basic rule. The aroma of the tea was commanding, filling the room and overpowering the delicate scent of incense. With a tea this good, you didn't discard the first infusion. That practice was mainly for common, everyday teas whose processing might not be perfectly clean. For exquisite, delicate leaves, the first steep was the essence. Throwing it away was a sign of a novice who'd only learned the superficial rules. This tea smelled pristine, with no off notes, and had clearly been stored well. Having mastered advanced tea ceremony proficiency level 4, Leo was well beyond a mere hobbyist. The system skill levels were entry, basic, intermediate, advanced, expert, and master. Leo had few advanced skills, and expert-level proficiency only surfaced occasionally when he was painting portraits. He hadn't even touched master level. But for everyday life, it was more than enough. The defining characteristic of Olympus Gold was its fragrance, an ethereal scent, rich but not cloying, that captivated the senses. Mr. Preston liked this tea because of its pleasant aroma and smooth taste, but he'd never experienced any of its other purported effects. The marketing claimed it embodied the Zen principle of mindfulness in a cup, possessing restorative and spiritual properties. He never felt any of that. It was nonsense. If drinking tea could grant enlightenment, the world would be full of sages. When his staff had researched Leo, they'd found videos of his tea ceremonies, showing people looking utterly transported. Mr. Preston had thought it was over the top, an exaggeration for the camera. But now, sitting here in silence, drinking the tea, listening to the bird song, inhaling the fragrance, and feeling the sunlight, he felt something shift. The tea flowed down his throat, warm and gentle, washing away the dust from his mind and the weariness from his body. He felt clear and invigorated. Suddenly, the world came into sharper focus. The bird song grew louder, joined by the faint chirping of insects. The rustle of leaves in the breeze, the dance of dust motes in the sunbeams. Everything was brighter, more vibrant. It was as if a transparent film over reality had been pierced, revealing a clearer, more vivid world. For the first time, the tea lived up to its name. It really did matter who brewed it. Mr. Preston felt like he'd been wasting it all these years, never unlocking its true potential. He'd had master tea artists prepare it for him before, and while it had tasted good, it had never produced this feeling of profound clarity. At his age, to feel his senses sharpen like this, it wasn't that his hearing or vision had actually improved, but his perception felt more acute. His life, until now, had been like a long-haul flight, the constant drone of the engines becoming background noise. Now, he had finally landed, popped his ears, and could suddenly hear a symphony of new sounds, smell a richer palette of scents. That was what this tea felt like. The taste was secondary, though of course it was delicious, not bitter or astringent, just fragrant, refreshing, and sweet. That was the baseline. After a long moment, Mr. Preston spoke. Good tea. One shouldn't drink it too often. A single sip brings you to paradise. If you're always in paradise, it becomes ordinary. Leo had a sip himself. Holy crap, this is amazing. It was 8 holy craps good, but he didn't feel any spiritual enlightenment. Perhaps his mind was already pure enough, unburdened by the dust of a long life. He just felt it was incredibly delicious, leaving a sweet taste on his tongue and causing a pleasant warmth to spread across his back. It was deeply satisfying. Dr. Shin drank his cup and smacked his lips. It was so good he felt a sudden urge to go memorize 50 ancient medicinal formulas. He'd been feeling his memory decline lately, many of the formulas he'd once known by heart now a bit fuzzy. Hearing Mr. Preston say one shouldn't drink it too often, and knowing this tea was likely impossible to buy on the open market, he spoke with his trademark bluntness. In that case, sir, you can give the rest to me. I can help you drink it. Mr. Preston froze. Oh my God. He remembered their first consultation. Dr. Shin had looked him in the eye and said, Sir, you have severe inflammation. Your hemorrhoids are protruding. We need to reduce the heat and shrink them. Before that moment, Mr. Preston hadn't even known he had hemorrhoids. No other doctor had ever been so direct. Hearing his godfather, Leo dutifully chimed in. Mr. Preston, I can help drink it too. Mr. Preston just stared at them. Unbelievable. They're hitting me up for freebies. Right here in my own home. He had to admit, it was a new one. Disciples of the same school, indeed. After tea, everyone felt refreshed. Mr. Preston's comment about not drinking good tea too often was a genuine reflection of his generation's mindset. They had a deep-seated fear of enjoying good fortune too much, a reluctance to become dependent on luxuries. They had suffered too much in their youth, and even after reaching the pinnacle of power, the scars of scarcity remained. Each generation has its own philosophy, shaped by its environment. Those who grew up in an era of deprivation cherished everything. You finished every drop in a water bottle because to do otherwise was wasteful. For the kids who grew up with abundance, a drink could be tossed after 2 sips if it wasn't good. They didn't force themselves. Consuming too much sugar was a health concern. It was a generational gap, neither right nor wrong, just different. But the old man knew quality when he saw it. His comment was just a sigh, a reminder to cherish his blessings. And these two straightforward souls had taken him literally, pouncing on the opportunity without a hint of shame. Mr. Preston found it amusing. People were usually scheming to give him gifts, trying to do so with subtlety and grace. It was rare for anyone to try and get something from him. He wasn't angry. In fact, he preferred this directness. He disliked being indebted to people, and, at his level, he didn't grant favors lightly. He considered his goodwill to be incredibly valuable, yet here was this brilliant doctor, oblivious to the game, asking for tea. And young Leo, clearly influenced by him, was just as guileless. Oh, what the hell? It's not like I'm short on tea, mister. Preston thought with an internal sigh. In the corner, his personal assistant, hidden from view, stared up at the glass ceiling as if fascinated by 2 leaves that had landed there. Little troublemakers always came in pairs. I have more, mister, Preston said, a note of resignation in his voice. You can each take half a pound with you when you leave. Dr. Shen was stunned. He had only been hoping for a few servings, and the old man was giving him half a pound. Thank you, sir, Dr. Shen said. Thank you, mister Preston, Leo echoed. The assistant's jaw tightened. The total annual yield of this tea was 5 pounds. This father-son duo was walking away with 1/5 of it. The massage was done, the tea was drunk, and the gift was secured. Now it was time for the exercises. General Ingram had announced in their private 7-person group chat that he had gotten up and gone to the bathroom by himself. His old comrades had praised him for the monumental achievement. At their age, being able to walk to the bathroom unassisted was cause for celebration. The general had explained how it happened. You know, I'm an impatient man, but young Dr. Foster guided me through the entire routine. The effect was remarkable. You all should try it. He then dropped a file with illustrations and instructions for Dr. Shen's mindful restoration technique into the chat. The group wasn't always active, and the others hadn't paid it much mind. But Mr. Preston had listened intently. He had visited the general when he was bedridden and had found the sight unbearable. Hearing that his old friend was on his feet again meant a great deal. He didn't want to end up in the same state. He was meticulous about his health, and his greatest hope was for a quick departure when his time came. He'd lived a long, hard life, and in his old age, he'd become surprisingly sentimental. He was afraid of pain. The previous night, unable to sleep, Mr. Preston had tried to follow the instructions himself. He'd failed. He considered himself an intelligent man. If a hothead like Ingram could do it, why couldn't he? His pride wouldn't allow it. Today, he was determined to master it, pretending he'd never tried before. With the experience from yesterday, Leo was even more adept. Mr. Preston, while frilier overall, didn't have a single critical ailment. Strengthening his body might actually extend his life as long as he avoided extreme emotional swings. Unlike General Ingram, Mr. Preston was receptive to advice and had his personal physicians with him at all times. He had 2 of them join in the exercise, wanting them to learn it so they could assist him in the future. The truth was, many similar exercises were beneficial. Western medicine has a saying, to cure sometimes, to relieve often, to comfort always. Traditional Chinese medicine held a similar philosophy. Many illnesses couldn't be cured, but comfort and support were invaluable. Building a patient's confidence could work wonders. The human body is a marvel, still not fully understood by science. If you believe in something with unwavering conviction, you can often make it happen. The mind is a powerful tool. Any endocrinologist will tell you to keep your emotions stable, as if every disease is born from stress. If that's true, then the reverse must also be possible. If emotions can control hormones to make you sick, they can also control them to make you strong. It was the same principle. After tea, Leo didn't linger on small talk. He had little in common with a man like Mr. Preston. Leo had barely seen 1/10 of life's road, while the old man had seen it 3 times over. They were at different stages, with no common language. He began guiding them through the exercises. Taking full advantage of his master instructor and teaching buffs, He had them regulate their breathing and start the visualization. Mr. Preston pictured electrical wiring. He'd worked in a machine room in his youth and had even taken courses as an electrician. Dr. Shin visualized the dense, intricate root systems of medicinal herbs. The two physicians followed along earnestly. They were a reflection of their leader, obedient and highly cooperative. Though they practiced a mix of Western and traditional medicine, and professional rivalries were common in many fields, medicine was more objective. A treatment either worked or it didn't. They knew their place. Leo might be young, but he had skill. His age wasn't a weakness. It was an asset. Leo's voice was clear and focused, as clean as the tea they had just drunk, and easy to follow. Mr. Preston felt like he understood it instantly. The confusing diagrams from last night suddenly made sense. It was like the first day of a new semester when a master teacher walks in and, in a few sentences, explains a concept that the previous teacher had droned on about for weeks, making it seem effortless. You suddenly get it, a moment of pure clarity. You'd always thought you were the stupid one, but it turns out it was the teacher's fault all along. Of course, the teacher might argue that other students understood just fine. But an excellent teacher can make even an average student grasp a concept quickly, solve problems, and even extrapolate. At this moment, Leo was that teacher. Mr. Preston and his doctors had tried other routines, including Qigong, but they were hard to stick with and rarely produced noticeable results. The instructions were always vague. Do it correctly, and it will work. But what was correctly? No one could give a straight answer. Who would dare promise a leader that a routine was guaranteed to work, a cure-all? But as the visualization slowly spread through his body, he felt a tingling in his hands, then a warmth in his abdomen, and finally a heat in the soles of his feet. The tangible feedback was a pleasant surprise. It seemed to be actually working. Mr. Preston broke into a light sweat. He felt certain he would sleep soundly tonight, or at least wake up fewer than 4 or 5 times. Even 1 or 2 fewer interruptions would be a blessing. Insomnia, at his age, was torment. As a young man, he'd been consumed by worries. Now his nerves were shot. But during the visualization, he felt the chaotic tangle of his thoughts being neatly sorted into clear, organized wires, each connected to its proper socket. Everything was clear, orderly, and calm. Best of all, the routine could be done lying down or sitting, which was a godsend for the elderly. Standing for too long was difficult. His legs would go numb, and a fall could be catastrophic. An old person's bones are brittle. In the countryside, many elderly people died years after a fall broke their pelvis and left them paralyzed. Mr. Preston let out a long breath. He knew his own body. This felt good. He wanted to ask them to stay for lunch, but Leo mentioned he had plans to meet his classmates at the altar of Earth and didn't want to be late. Mr. Preston, hoping to chat with the young man a bit more, made an offer. That's no problem. Have lunch with this old man, and I'll have someone drive you there afterward. I'll make a call to the director over there, and you and your friends can have a private tour. Lunch was very healthy. Leo had expected to be wowed, to be served exotic creatures that ran on land and swam in the sea, things you couldn't find anywhere else. He never would have guessed that the great man's lunch would be hand-pulled beef noodle soup. The only difference from a regular noodle shop was that the chef was standing right in front of them. It was just like the noodle shops in the Northwest, where the chef pulls, cooks, and serves the noodles right before your eyes. Unlike in the South and the Northwest, you have to get the noodles yourself. You pay, get a ticket, and give it to the chef, telling him what kind of noodle you want. Thin, second thin, third thin, hair thin, thin wide, extra wide, double thick, or leek leaf. If you use one of those names, the chef knows you're in the know. If you just ask for noodles, he'll ask if you want chili, assuming you're a Southerner who can't handle the spice. Anyone who knows the noodle code is considered pro. The default was thin, about the thickness of a standard rice noodle. The others were variations on thickness and width, with hair thin being so fine that a master chef could pull it to the consistency of angel hair pasta. The seemingly simple lunch was, Leo suspected, a concession to his godfather. But then he heard that Mr. Preston had also been stationed in the Northwest years ago, so it was possible he'd been craving it himself. They say that anyone who spends time in the Northwest develops a lifelong craving for that specific bowl of noodles. So there were no exotic delicacies, just a simple, hearty meal. Was the life of a Titan really so modest? Well, not exactly. Though the main course was noodles, there were several side dishes, just like in a real noodle shop, only with much nicer presentation. Kimchi, wood ear mushrooms, onions, green beans, and thick slices of beef shank, all fresh and crisp. The noodle chef was a middle-aged man, impeccably dressed and clean, his movements precise and practiced. He stretched a ball of dough into a cascade of noodles with effortless grace. Mr. Preston requested the leek leaf style. I used to like the extra wide for the chewiness, he explained. But my teeth aren't what they used to be, so I ate hair thin for years. Now that I'm old, I find I miss the wider noodles again. Leek leaf is a good compromise. Dr. Shun, a creature of habit, ordered his usual second thin. Leo chose hair thin. He'd heard it was the true test of a master's skill, incredibly difficult to pull to a uniform fineness. While his godfather and Mr. Preston chatted, Leo asked if he could film the chef. Mr. Preston had seen him taking photos of the tea earlier and knew he was making TikTok videos with his roommates. By Mr. Preston's own standards, Leo had a promising future in either tea or medicine. But at his age, he had a more enlightened perspective. Don't interfere with the young. The old ways might not apply to their world, which was changing at lightning speed. Don't impose your outdated ideas on them. Even if you don't understand, learn and respect. So Leo filmed the chef while Dr. Shun and the old leader talked. They chatted about health and wellness, a topic on which Dr. Shun could always hold his own. He'd been dealing with powerful people for a long time and had his own methods. He didn't ask for much, but leaders didn't like to feel indebted. So sometimes it was better to just ask for what you wanted outright. It cleared the air. He'd asked for the tea, and the leader was probably relieved. You might think you're doing a titan a favor, that he'll remember your kindness, but it doesn't work that way. The higher up they are, the more they worry you'll use that favor against them. His blunt, straightforward approach was much cleaner. And at his age, having come up the hard way, he knew how the world worked, even if he wasn't a natural socialite. General Ingram was a different case. The general didn't need anything from him, so he didn't have to ask for anything. The general had a grandson about Leo's age, and by being kind to Leo, he was forging a connection. So Dr. Shun would never ask the general for anything. Anyone who reached this level without a trail of chaos and drama behind them, no matter how bumbling they seemed, was anything but a fool. And besides, now that he'd asked for the tea, if he ever needed a real favor, would the old man refuse? Of course not, but the dynamic would be different. The leader would feel he was helping him, not being strong-armed into repaying a debt. It was always better when the Titan felt he was the one granting the favor. If you insisted on a strict quid pro quo, there would be no next time. It would be a one-time transaction. Dr. Shun, rough on the outside but shrewd on the inside, had his own code for survival. Leo, meanwhile, was chatting with the chef as he filmed. Since he was here, he figured he'd get some footage for Sean. He couldn't film Mr. Preston, but filming the food was fair game. A powerful leader eating noodle soup. How was that not a picture of modesty? A single-dish meal, incredibly simple. Even if the chef's salary was astronomical. The chef was a handsome man, tall with a high-bridged nose, and very photogenic. His movements were the mark of an expert, a true master. Clean, beautiful, and fluid. Watching him pull noodles was like watching a performance. Leo didn't know much about noodle making, but if he did, he would have recognized this man as a level 1 national master chef, the same professional tier as his own tea certification. This man was at the apex of his craft. He was the one who had made noodles for Putin during his state visit. The chef, seeing the young man filming, was gracious. This was the leader's guest, and anyone comfortable enough to pull out a phone and film in front of the leader was no ordinary guest. Most visitors wouldn't even dare take out their phones. To be able to do so without being stopped meant you were special. The chef was very accommodating, answering all of Leo's questions as he worked. He wore a mask and a clear face shield, and his voice had a slight northwestern accent that was surprisingly charming. He was a man who had seen the world. The camera didn't faze him at all. A good bowl of beef noodle soup must satisfy 5 criteria, he explained, his hands moving with practice speed. 1. Clear broth. 2. White radish. 3. Red chili oil. 4. Green cilantro and scallions. And 5. Yellow noodles. The clarity comes from a fragrant, clear beef broth. The white is from perfectly sliced, sweet daikon radish. The red is the chili oil. That's where the real flavor is. All the spices are in there. The green is the fresh cilantro and scallions sprinkled on top. And the yellow is the noodle itself. Good hand-pulled noodles should be smooth and have a slight yellow hue, not pure white. As he finished his explanation, a perfect bowl of noodles was ready. The image was stunning. Red chili, green herbs, clear broth, yellow noodles, and white radish. Leo even helped bring the bowls to the table. He sat down and took a bite. It was extraordinary. The chili oil was more fragrant than spicy, nothing like the searing heat he was used to. It was savory and rich. The noodles were chewy, but not rubbery. soaking up the broth perfectly. The scallions added a mild, peppery bite that complemented the soup. A mouthful of noodles, a bite of beef, a nibble of the side dish, and then, after blowing on the red oil slick, a big slurp of the broth. It was pure bliss. Mr. Preston usually had just a small bowl. Today, with Leo and Dr. Shun for company, he had two, followed by a cup of jujube tea, another staple of the noodle shops back west. Dr. Shun finished one large bowl of his second thin noodles and sighed contentedly. When you're away from home, this is the one thing you miss. I'm satisfied. Leo ate 3 bowls. Dr. Shun and Mr. Preston watched him with envy. Youth was a wonderful thing. Leo had tried the hair thin, the leek leaf, and the regular thin. He decided the hair thin was his favorite. The fine noodles soaked up the most broth, making every bite an explosion of flavor. He also discovered that dipping the beef shank in the soup made it even better. The broth softened the tendon until it was melt-in-your-mouth tender, the slight spice playing off the beef's natural sweetness. The jujube tea at the end was also excellent, spiced with something he couldn't quite identify. They had all worked up an appetite with the tea and exercises. Mr. Preston had eaten twice his usual amount and was in high spirits. After lunch, it was time for the old man's nap. Dr. Shin was also heading back for his own siesta. A luxury executive shuttle van, a driver, and an assistant were arranged to take Leo to the altar of Earth. The assistant was polite, enthusiastic, and impeccably dressed. In his tailored suit and overcoat, he looked nothing like a salesman. Leo noticed that no one in the leader's orbit seemed to be unattractive. Or rather, it wasn't about looks but presence. They all carried themselves with an air of correctness. Even the driver, who hadn't said a word, sat perfectly straight, without a hint of slouching. The assistant introduced himself as Adam Wright. Leo politely called him Adam. Mr. Wright smiled at the informal address. Growing up in a factory town, Leo had learned to be respectful and greet everyone properly. It was basic manners. In the van, Mr. I was quite chatty. He asked about Leo's plans for the afternoon. Was he only going to the park? Were there other places he wanted to see? We just have the park planned, Leo said. My roommates already bought the tickets. Just dropping me off is fine, thank you. I'll meet them there. Mr. Wright smiled. The leader had told him to accompany Leo, which meant taking good care of him. If it were just a drop-off, a driver would have sufficed. Of course, he said. I'll get you there. You and your friends have a good time. If you need anything at all, just call me. Let's exchange numbers. Leo pulled up his contact QR code, and Mr. Wright scanned it, sending over his name and number. Adam Wright, 202-555-0142. Leo saved the contact and sent his own, followed by a cute animated sticker of a prancing deer. After adding each other, they chatted about D.C.'s history, the weather, and the best places to eat. When Leo let out a small yawn, Mr. Wright handed him a bottle of water and suggested he rest for a bit. The traffic in the city can be bad, he said. I'll wake you when we're close. Leo was impressed. The man really was a top-tier assistant, so thoughtful. The water was the perfect temperature, warm and comforting. The noodle soup had been a bit salty, and the water was a welcome relief. He decided to take a short nap. He had a busy evening ahead after the park and needed to conserve his energy. As he closed his eyes, soft, ambient music began to play through the van's speakers. Wow, Leo thought. This guy was incredible, anticipating every need. He had initially thought having an assistant tag along would be overkill, even awkward, but it was the little details that made all the difference. He'd felt a little thirsty, and before he could even think to ask, water appeared. A hot towel was offered the moment he got in the van. The moment he closed his eyes, calming music began. The van's air was fresh, the temperature perfect. Maybe this is why people strive to become titans, he mused. Just to have people take care of them like this. Alex's voice in his head. My goal is to contribute to a higher quality of life for the American people. But I'm not opposed to improving my own quality of life in the process. I'm one of the people, too. Leo thought back to the lunch. A master chef preparing one bowl at a time. Just for them? It was absurdly extravagant. But a life of luxury could lead to a lack of moderation. He was now uncomfortably full, his brain feeling like it had diverted all power to his digestive system. He was sleepy. He closed his eyes to rest, and just as he was drifting off, the system's mechanical chime echoed in his mind. See, the system isn't nearly as considerate as Mr. Right? Host has diligently completed the massage task. Received sincere gratitude +1 from Diamond Tier Target. Host has diligently completed the tea ceremony task. Received genuine appreciation +1 from Diamond Tier Target. Host has diligently completed the health instruction task. Received sincere gratitude +1 from Diamond Tier target. Host has diligently enjoyed a fine meal. Received genuine appreciation +1 from Diamond Tier target. Reward. 4 attribute points. Reward. Buff. Cloak of Influence permanent. When an individual becomes interested in you and investigates your background through various channels, this passive buff will activate, leading them to conclude that you possess a profound and powerful backing. Figures Leo thought. With a Titan, you don't have to grind for reputation. Everything is a clear transaction. One task, 1 point. If he'd started with an intelligence of 1, he could have leveled up to an 8 in just a few days and become a genius. Then again, someone with an intelligence of 1 probably wouldn't have found their way into a Titan's presence in the first place, unless they tripped and fell into it. He checked his attribute panel. Leo, Foster Physique, 8. 1, ±1/10. Endurance, Speed, Strength, Agility +1, Recovery, Intelligence, 8. 2, ±1/10. Perception, Memory, Logic +1, Language +1, Learning, Creativity, Vibe, 8, +1/10. Mindset, Passion, Resilience, Integrity, 8, -1/10. Consciousness, Principles, Conduct, Appearance, 8, ±1/10. Features, Style, Build, Poise, Lifespan, 21/62. 1/110. Current/projected/max. He allocated the 4 new points, 2 to Physique and 2 to Intelligence. Physique, V. 3, ±1/10. Endurance +1, Speed +1, Strength, Agility +1, Recovery, Intelligence, 8. 4, ±1/10. Perception, Memory +1, Logic +1, Language +1, Learning +1, Creativity. He wasn't sure how the sub-attributes were assigned. His body felt energized, and his mind felt like it was processing the new input. He settled back to rest. Mr. Wright had escorted many people, some flashy, some discreet, but all of them powerful. After all, anyone the leader assigned him to personally was someone important. The young man before him was still a student, yet he carried himself with a steady, polite confidence. He wasn't arrogant, but approachable. The leader had instructed him to take good care of the boy, and there was a subtle difference between a polite instruction and a genuine one. An assistant had to know how to read those nuances. It was the same with the leader's anger. A public scolding was often a light warning. It was the silence, the lack of criticism, that signaled you were truly on the outs. This young man, handsome, upstanding, and favored by the leader, had a limitless future. He was someone worth cultivating a good relationship with. Noticing the boy's breathing even out, Mr. Wright quietly turned up the heat. The body's temperature drops during sleep. A little extra warmth would make him more comfortable. Meanwhile, Alex's cousin, Ryan Hahn, wasn't driving his G-Wagon today. He'd had to show up at the office. Even though his family was an investor and he was basically there because of nepotism, he still had to clock in. It was a matter of showing respect to the boss. Not that his salary even covered his expenses. His family's investment was the only reason he had a job. His schedule was flexible. His plan was to clock in and then meet up with his cousin and Sean to continue his editing lessons. He'd been fired up about it the last couple of days. But as luck would have it, he ran right into the big boss on his way in. He tried to duck away, but it was too late. He was caught. A lecture ensued. He was late again. After a storm of spit-flecked criticism, Ryan finally got a word in. Uncle Marcus, come on. I'm in sales. I can't be tied to a desk first thing in the morning. My clients aren't even awake yet. The surrounding co-workers who had been enjoying the show quickly dispersed. So the big boss was his uncle. They'd always heard he got the job through connections. Ryan couldn't help it. After coming back from overseas, he couldn't find a decent job, and he wasn't cut out for civil service exams. Then his uncle-in-law, Marcus Bell, had come to visit his grandfather and offered him a job on the spot. Ryan didn't like Marcus. His uncle's family had been ordinary people. Marrying his aunt had been a huge step up for them. But Marcus was sharp and incredibly ambitious, and his business had flourished. Now, he was a different man, rich. In the old days, he'd visit on every holiday, not just bringing gifts, but eagerly helping with chores, even insisting on cleaning the fish tank. Of course, his grandfather would send him home with plenty of valuable things in return. Now, Marcus visited once a year, dropped off some expensive supplements, exchanged a few words, and rushed off. To be fair, he wasn't a bad person. He had given Ryan a job. He was just annoying. He loved to lecture, and though he wasn't openly cruel, Ryan could feel the palpable disdain from him. When Ryan was a kid, Uncle Marcus had been full of praise, calling him handsome and destined for greatness. Now, it was just a constant stream of, "Ryan, you're doing this wrong. You need to fix that." Ryan wasn't sure what was wrong with his uncle's brain. He was perfectly normal with everyone else, but the moment he saw Ryan, he transformed into a motivational speaker. "Ryan, that's the wrong attitude," Marcus continued, his voice booming. "I'm only telling you this for your own good. This laziness, this lack of basic punctuality. You know what? Never mind. Where are you going? I'll give you a ride." Though Marcus looked down on Ryan, he wasn't about to burn the bridge entirely. Old Mr. Han was still around, and some connections were still valuable. He'd brought the kid into his company without any expectation of actual work and was paying him a decent salary. Otherwise, he wouldn't have taken him on even for free. It was a favor. Seeing Ryan was like a scene from a historical drama. The descendant of the Prime Minister's gatekeeper, now wealthy, offering charity to the Prime Minister's down-on-his-luck grandson. So Ryan ditched his G-Wagon and got into his uncle's car, a luxury sedan with an opulent interior of wood and leather that could probably buy 3 of his own vehicle. Since his uncle was insisting on giving him a ride, he might as well use him as a chauffeur. First stop, the Ritz-Carlton, to pick up his cousin and his friends. Marcus, now a glorified taxi driver, wasn't offended. He had a driver. Anyway, he knew that old Mr. Han owned a valuable painting by Edward Hopper, one with a personal inscription to Ryan's great-grandfather. One of his clients was looking for a Hopper, and he figured he could convince this spendthrift kid to get it for him. He'd pay market value, of course. It wouldn't be a swindle. Better that he buy it than have some other con artist trick Ryan out of it. A young man like Ryan couldn't hold onto family treasures forever. Besides the Georgetown townhouse, the old man probably had a trove of other heirlooms he stubbornly refused to sell. So Marcus put on a show, flaunting the luxurious life of the wealthy for Ryan's benefit. When they picked up Ryan's friends, the dynamic was clear. Alex was Ryan's cousin, but he wasn't related to Marcus, not on that side of the family. Because Ryan seemed like a good-for-nothing rich kid, Marcus assumed his friends were the same. Ryan never played the "my cousin's dad is a deputy mayor" card, which might have earned them a little more respect. As it was, Marcus treated them all like children, pontificating from the front seat and basking in his own superiority. Ryan had no idea what had gotten into his uncle, but if he was offering to buy them all lunch, who was he to refuse? Free food was free food. Alex and the guys had gotten used to being treated to things over the past few days. When Ryan introduced Marcus as his boss and uncle, they were all perfectly polite, shaking his hand. Marcus offered a limp, dismissive touch in return. He took them to an expensive restaurant in the hotel and ordered lobster and king crab. 2 orders of crab, prepared 2 different ways. Of the 3 friends, Alex was presentable enough, but Jordan was a schlubby gamer who ordered an ice-cold Coke, and Sean was even more reserved, a wallflower of "whatever's fine, and I'll have the same." Marcus felt a fresh wave of pity for Ryan. So this was the level of company he kept now. Kids from some small town. Ryan, meanwhile, was completely in awe of Sean and treated him with the utmost respect, which Marcus interpreted as yet another sign of his nephew's lack of ambition. After the meal, Marcus, a man with a 9-figure net worth, drove them to the park, unable to resist sharing more of his life's wisdom on the way. Alex was an excellent audience, feeding Marcus's ego with perfectly timed affirmations. Marcus found himself thinking the kid wasn't half bad. Maybe there was one teachable soul in a bunch. "You're all too young to understand the power of a network," Marcus declared. "Business isn't just about hard work. You need connections." "You're absolutely right, Mr. Bell," Alex said smoothly. "We haven't even graduated yet. We have so much to learn. It's a real privilege to hear your insights." Marcus beamed. The kid had potential. If he couldn't find a job, maybe he could find a spot for him at his company. He ignored the other 2. As they neared the park, Marcus was about to drop them off and leave when he spotted a familiar face at the entrance. He tried to get a meeting with this man several times, with no luck. And there he was, standing next to a young man, speaking to him with a posture of clear deference. Leo and Adam Wright had arrived a few minutes early and were waiting by the entrance as they'd arranged in their texts. Mr. Wright had gotten out of the car to wait with him. The more powerful the leader, the more cautious their staff. There would be no driving into a national park. That was for amateurs. Real D.C. insiders, educated from birth on the rules of the game, bought their own tickets. Mr. Wright's job was to provide emotional support, waiting in the cold, making conversation, while the park director came sprinting down the path to greet them. Marcus, who hadn't even planned on getting out of the car, was suddenly the first one out the door, rushing toward Adam Wright. "Mr. Wright, what a pleasure," he exclaimed. "Marcus Bell, from Bellwether Media. I've tried to schedule a meeting with you a few times, but our schedules never seem to align. I can't believe I've run into you here. Mr. Wright didn't recognize the man who had suddenly appeared before him, but he was a professional. He extended his hand, and Marcus eagerly took the limp offering with both of his, shaking it with effusive warmth. A normal handshake is a mutual grasp, but a truly powerful person's handshake is limp, almost weightless. The higher the rank, the softer the hand. When they offer it, there's no sense of grip. The firm handshakes you see between world leaders on the news are a sign of equal footing. When the leader of a small nation visits a superpower, they are met with a soft, boneless hand. Alex watched the man who extended that hand to his friend Leo. He had that unmistakable air. He was a creature of the system, a D.C. insider. And watching his cousin's uncle-in-law, Marcus Bell, perform a complete 180 from arrogant benefactor to fawning sycophant was fascinating. Ryan Hahn was mortified by his uncle's behavior. He knew exactly what kind of man Marcus was. Opportunistic to the core. When he needed something, his humility knew no bounds. He'd once rolled up his sleeves and unclogged the toilet in their Georgetown townhouse. Overly eager. And when an overly eager person suddenly cools off, their true, calculating nature is revealed. They could have hired a plumber. If Marcus could have kept up the act forever, that would be one thing. But people like him rarely can. The moment they get a taste of success, they become insufferable. Ryan's own father was just as unambitious as he was, set to retire at his current deputy director level. So in recent years, as Marcus's fortunes rose, his attitude had completely changed. Seeing him now, groveling, Ryan knew the man he was shaking hands with must be someone important. And that important man was standing beside Leo, looking at him with respect. Which meant the most important person there was Leo. Ryan bounced over and gave Leo a big, enthusiastic hug. It was a habit he'd picked up abroad. Leo, caught in the embrace, stiffened. Okay, this is fine, but if you try to kiss my cheek, I will deck you. Ryan, thankfully, had only mastered the hey man part of the greeting. The cheek-kissing part grossed him out too. But Marcus saw it all. He saw his nephew, who he'd just been lecturing, acting incredibly familiar with this young man. And Mr. Wright, whose hand he'd barely been allowed to touch, turned and spoke warmly to the same young man. Your roommates are here, Mr. Wright said to Leo. Shall we go in? You mentioned you wanted to learn more about the park's history, so I've arranged for a professional guide to meet us. He's just arriving now. The guide, who was actually the park's director, sprinted toward them, ready to begin his tour. A moment ago, he had been thinking about how small the park was. Now, as he ran down the main path lined with cypress trees, it felt miles long. Marcus had only been trying to show off for Ryan and his friends. On the way over, he'd been regaling them with tales of his adventurous life, like his hunting trips and how he'd managed to get a firearms license. The guns were kept under lock and key, of course, but shooting was a thrill. Driving into the mountains at night with friends, flushing out game with infrared scopes. The stories went on and on. In the car, Alex and the others had listened attentively. It was interesting to hear someone brag about a world so different from their own. Sean had questions. How can you even own a gun? His father had told him that even the old hunters in their village had turned in their rifles 20 years ago. But he was too shy to ask. Besides, what was there to hunt these days? Everything was a protected species. You couldn't even catch the native salamanders in their creek anymore. Marcus had then launched into stories about shooting ranges abroad, where a single round of ammunition could cost thousands of dollars. He was a man of immense wealth. He talked so much that Sean didn't dare interrupt. Jordan thought the guy was a total blowhard, just like the suppliers his dad worked with who would boast about their tiny corner stores as if they were 30,000 square foot supermarkets. Alex, meanwhile, had been listening and offering just enough praise to keep Marcus talking. By the end of the ride, he had a pretty good idea of how his cousin's uncle had made his fortune. He'd gotten an early government contract to put up billboards on the highways, an incredibly lucrative business, especially around the capital. He had connections, he was a skilled social climber, and kept the people in charge happy. He gave them a cut. But now his business needed to expand. His original patron had retired or fallen out of favor, so he needed to find a new one. Or maybe it was the other way around. His constant bragging was why he couldn't maintain good relationships. When Alex saw him leap out of the car, it all clicked. It was a lesson to himself. If he ever got promoted, he would never be this transparently desperate. Leo was just happy to see his friends. Being with them felt natural and easy. Mr. Wright, seeing Leo's bright, sincere smile, knew he had a good relationship with his roommates. Having a few close friends from college was a rare and precious thing. That kind of bond, forged before the complexities of careers and vested interests, could last a lifetime. Mr. Wright smiled warmly at Leo's friends. Just moments before, Marcus had been treating them like clueless hicks. Now, the man he couldn't get a meeting with was treating them with genuine kindness. "It's windy out here today, mister," Wright said. "I brought some windbreaker vests for you all." The wind was indeed biting. He handed each of them a thick, navy blue fleece-lined vest. It looked like a high-end Canada Goose model, but was unbranded, probably a custom government issue. The sizes were perfect for each of them, another thoughtful detail. Marcus watched in disbelief as Mr. Wright personally handed out the vest to the very same young men he'd been lecturing in the car. He wanted to get a word in with Mr. Wright, but hadn't been able to get close. He remembered Ryan saying on the way over that his cousin and his 3 roommates were meeting at the park. The Leo Ryan had been talking about was the young man at Mr. Wright's side. He couldn't let this opportunity slip away. But Ryan, oblivious, said cheerfully, "Thanks for the ride, Uncle Marcus. You can go ahead, we're all set." Marcus's face fell. "I'm not actually that busy." For the residents who lived nearby, the park was probably just a place for an after-dinner stroll, like the waterfront park or the fountain square back home. But thanks to Daniel Vance's work, the altar of Earth felt special. Everyone had read excerpts of it in school. It was his sanctuary, a refuge from the noise of the world. As 4 healthy young men, they couldn't fully grasp that sentiment. But their guide, Mr. Sinclair, was a true professional. He could point to a tree, a blade of grass, a single stone, and quote a corresponding line from the book. It was as if they were accompanying the wheelchair-bound author on his journey through the park all over again. Even a healthy middle-aged man would have trouble understanding that feeling. But if you were living with a serious illness, the view from a different altitude would resonate so deeply it could bring you to tears. Reading it, you would understand. A friendship with death has a sense of destiny. Mr. Sinclair quoted, his voice rich and sonorous. "The altar has been here for over 400 years, waiting quietly for my arrival." Mr. Sinclair was an older man with a classic comb-over, trying to salvage a losing battle against baldness. But his voice was powerful and clear, and he had a captivating way of speaking. Sean filmed everything, with Ryan right beside him, trying to learn from his angles. Ryan had brought his own camera, a beast with a long lens, to show he was serious. But after a few minutes, he was exhausted. It was too heavy. Sean, used to manual labor, could carry his camera all day. Ryan's arms were burning, and his face was pale. In the end, Leo ended up carrying the camera for him, while Ryan used his phone to try and mimic Sean's shots. Leo was strong. The weight was nothing to him. But when Mr. Wright saw Leo carrying something, he immediately jogged over. "Let me get that for you," he insisted. "You boys enjoy the tour. Hands-free is better. I'm just relaxing over here anyway. I came here all the time as a kid. Mr. Foster, please give it to me." And so, Ryan's ridiculously heavy camera was passed to Mr. Wright. Marcus Bell, who had shamelessly tagged along, saw his chance. "Mr. Wright, allow me," he said, practically snatching the camera. Leo and his friends toured the park. The wind was strong, especially near the altar itself, where there were no trees to block it. But the view was spectacular. The altar was a magnificent structure, and Mr. Sinclair explained that it was a place of ancient ceremony. He even pointed out that the opening sequence of a famous historical drama had been filmed there, showing them the best spots for photos. They took the obligatory tourist shots and a group photo in front of the altar. The 4 of them, wearing matching navy blue government-issue vests, stood before the gleaming, golden-roofed structure under a vast, blue sky. The wind was brisk, but the sun was bright, so it wasn't too cold. Their plan was to stay for 2 more days until the art exhibition ended, and then head back. The trip was fun, but after a few days, they were all feeling a little homesick. They'd eaten well, often at lavish restaurants, but their stomachs were starting to miss the familiar, if terrible, food from the university cafeteria and the cheap eats from the student strip. A person's stomach has its own memory. Alex and Jordan had offered to cover the expenses for the trip, but so far, they hadn't had to spend much. The park entrance fee was a mere $2 or $1 with a student ID, though that didn't include access to the inner sanctums. During festival times, it was $30 for adults and $15 for students. Their transportation had been covered by Ryan's uncle. And on other days, Ryan had driven them, saving them a fortune in cab fare in the gridlock city. For a $1 ticket, they were getting a tour from a highly distinguished and knowledgeable guide. Leo, curious, asked him how he knew so much. The guide modestly replied, "I'm a researcher here at the park. I have a doctorate in the field, and I've published a book on the history of the altar." Leo and his friends exchanged wide-eyed glances. They were humbled. D.C. was full of hidden masters. As they were leaving, Around dusk, they were surprised to learn that their guide was actually the park's director. He gifted each of them with souvenirs from the park. A beautifully crafted keychain of the altar made of resin with sparkling glitter inside, a yo-yo with scenes from the park on its sides, and a squishy stress toy shaped like the altar. The designs were a charming mix of classical and cute, and the quality was excellent. Leo thought Stella might like them. They had planned to part ways after the tour, not wanting to impose on Mr. Wright any further. Ryan's uncle had called him Mr. Wright with such reverence, and the director had been equally deferential. But Marcus Bell insisted on treating them all to dinner. Roast duck, ADC, specialty. You could find a good duck place almost anywhere, he said. It didn't have to be famous. He took them to a quiet, unassuming restaurant not far from the park, perfect for a group of friends. The specialty here was a smaller, less fatty, but more fragrant duck. Marcus was insistent. He had a rare opportunity to be in Mr. Wright's presence, and with a loose family connection, no less. He would be a fool not to seize it. It was too soon to make any requests, but just establishing a connection was a victory. The next time he tried to schedule a meeting, maybe he wouldn't be turned away at the door. Ryan and his friends came out of the park to find his uncle still waiting. Being the boss must be nice, Ryan thought. So much free time. He had to invent excuses to leave the office. His uncle didn't need any. Marcus sighed. I am working. This is networking. For some reason, Uncle Marcus was suddenly incredibly enthusiastic, his demeanor strangely familiar, reminding Ryan of the eager, striving man who used to visit their home years ago. Leo, who hadn't witnessed Marcus's lunchtime bragging or condescending attitude, just saw him as his friend's boss and uncle and was polite. Since Marcus was so insistent on dinner, they felt they should accept. It was a matter of showing respect to an elder. Ryan didn't care either way. He was on paid leave. He had nothing to lose. His family just wanted him to have a job. They didn't expect him to support himself. Mr. Wright stayed for dinner as well. The high-end vests were not to be returned. We have plenty, he said. They're new. Keep them. It's still cold in the city. They'll be useful. And they were. The vests were incredibly warm and well-made, and they looked sharp in the photos. Alex was thrilled. He thought he'd seen the governor of his state wearing a similar one at an event. Jordan wasn't picky. Anything that made him look slimmer was a win. And Sean was grateful for the warmth. His own jacket wasn't very insulated. Marcus Bell, a true chameleon, was a different person at dinner. His lunchtime conversation had been all about himself. At dinner, it was all about them. He catered the topics to what a group of college kids would find interesting. With Mr. Right at the table, he was on his best behavior. His job was to make sure Leo was taken care of until his evening plans began. He knew Leo was heading back to General Ingram's. He would see him off, and then his duty would be done. The leader hadn't specified, but a good assistant always thinks ahead. When he was being humble, Marcus was actually a great storyteller. He talked about his hunting trips and his early days in business, the hardships of a traveling salesman. His stories were vivid and animated. He even mimicked a fleeing prairie dog and a wild mountain goat, making everyone laugh. The meal was genuinely enjoyable. Ryan felt a pang of nostalgia. This was the Uncle Marcus of his childhood, the one who could light up a room and make the whole family roar with laughter. After dinner, Marcus offered to drive them back to the hotel, but then they watched as Leo, the young man Mr. Wright had been so carefully attending to, the Leo his nephew had been talking about all day, was picked up by a black sedan with official government plates and driven away separately. Mr. Wright, his mission complete, also departed. On the ride back, Marcus tried to pry information from the remaining young men. Where had Leo gone? Sean was a closed book, his eyes wide and innocent as he shook his head. Jordan was absorbed in a game on his phone, a blur of frantic tapping. Alex skillfully dodged the questions, turning the conversation back to Marcus's fascinating business career. And Ryan just shrugged. I don't know. Leo didn't say. Marcus was dying of curiosity. He'd recognized those plates. They were the kind of plates that made even Rolls-Royce owners pull over. He'd watched the young man, escorted by security, slide into the car as if it were the most natural thing in the world, waving a cheerful goodbye. Marcus felt a thrill run through him, a tingling in the soles of his feet. He felt like he had just brushed up against a world he had only ever dreamed of entering. The sun set 16 minutes later in D.C., and it did back on campus. Leo had confirmed this with Stella. It wasn't a newfound passion for astronomy. It was just that people in the early stages of love become acutely aware of the world around them. Every flower, every dog on the street, every cloud in the sky becomes a point of interest, something to be shared. So they shared the sunset times. Lately, Stella had been feeling a little lost. She was trying to mentally prepare for being apart. If she decided to study abroad, a long-distance relationship was inevitable. She'd brought it up with Leo, but he had no plans to leave the country. At first, she thought it would be easy. She had been independent for 20 years. She didn't need anyone to survive. And in the heat of a new romance, a little distance could be a good thing, a chance to cool down and think clearly. But this felt different from their time apart during fall break. Completely different. There was a crude saying in some circles. For some guys, sex is the goal. For some girls, it's the starting line. The dynamic had shifted. Then there were the romance scammers who used psychology to create a perfect, custom-made partner, only to drain your bank account. That was a different beast altogether, usually conducted entirely online by someone who might not even be the gender or species they claimed to be. But high school and college love was pure. There were no replacements, no second chances. In the car, without Mr. Right's calming presence, Leo felt a bit out of place. The security detail was silent, their large, imposing frames making him feel small. Is 5 feet 9 inches really that short? He wondered. It's not, right? If I jumped, I could definitely hit them on the head. He messaged with Stella for a while, sending her pictures of the park souvenirs and some shots he'd taken of the city from the car. The architecture was beautiful, a jarring and fascinating mix of modern and classical. Stella sent back photos of the campus. Then she added, "Something's up with Jessica. She's been completely out of it." Leo's first thought was of her strange mother, Julie Zhu. But he knew better than to speculate about another girl with his girlfriend, especially if he knew more than she did. It was a classic trap. He wisely kept his mouth shut. He was keeping her trip a secret from everyone else, but not from Stella. A man in love has no secrets from his girlfriend. He'll tell her everything, from who has hemorrhoids to the most sensitive state secrets. He told Stella that his godfather had taken him to visit a patient, a very high-ranking official in D.C., but he hadn't gone into specifics, mostly because he didn't know them himself. Their conversations were mostly filled with pleasant nonsense. The important stuff had to be extracted from 100 lines of fluff. He told her he was almost there and would talk to her later. Stella didn't press about Jessica. Earlier that day, Jessica had insisted she could manage her forgery herself. Feeling uneasy about Jessica's vacant mood, Stella had gone to check on her anyway. She found her sitting there in a daze, the 4-bag empty, blood backing up into the tube. When Stella pulled the needle, blood spurted out, but Jessica just stared, completely forgetting to press the cotton ball to the spot. Stella had no idea what was wrong, but she felt a growing frustration with Jessica's self-destructive anxiety. Jessica had seen the news. She knew Leo's painting had sold for a high price, and that he had donated the money. She was relieved. If he had come to her and offered her a portion of the proceeds for being his model, she would have been mortified. The more insecure a person is, the harder it is for them to accept that kind of charity. If she were wealthy, she might have taken the money without a second thought. It would have been a transaction between equals, like the gifts Leo and Stella exchanged. But she had nothing, and taking the money would have felt like accepting a handout. She had never wanted the money. It had nothing to do with her. Her face wasn't worth that much. She'd shown on Instagram and during her live streams. But then, a strange number had added her on a messaging app. She was always applying for part-time jobs, so she assumed it was a potential employer. She accepted the request. She glanced at the person's profile. It was a curated highlight reel of a wealthy socialite's life. Golfing, her children's piano lessons, garden parties, her son's academic awards. She seemed like a kind person. One post was about her and her son finding a stray cat and taking it to the vet. The cat had needed surgery, and the bill was over $1,000. The rich really did live in a different world. In the end, because her son was allergic, they found a good home for the cat, even paying a handsome fee to the shelter that took it in. Jessica wasn't a stalker. She just liked to get a sense of who was contacting her. The profile picture was of a beautiful middle-aged woman, but the posts were mostly about her children and her affluent, international lifestyle. Many of the captions were in English, and the photos didn't look like they were taken in the U.S. This wasn't unfamiliar to Jessica. She was an English major and worked for several foreign professors. It was probably a new tutoring gig. Her professor, Jim, was a good guy and often recommended her for jobs. She liked working for foreigners. They could be demanding and sometimes condescending, but they were also generous with pay, which made the rest of it tolerable. She'd been sick for nearly a week and hadn't worked at all. She felt mostly better, aside from a nagging cough, but being idle made her anxious. She had debts to pay, and she didn't want to owe anyone anything, especially not Leo. It was the last shred of her pride. She accepted the friend request. The person sent a simple introduction. "I am Julie." Jessica sent her resume, thoughtfully providing both English and Chinese versions. She was the legendary 20-year-old with 40 years of work experience. And that was after she'd trimmed it down to her most impressive accomplishments. She assumed it was a contact from Professor Jim and wanted to be proactive. Opportunities were rare. You had to seize them. But the person didn't reply for a long time. Just as Jessica was about to dismiss it as a mistake, she received a photo. It was an old, faded picture of a little girl with a toothy grin, wearing a plaid dress, her hair in 2 pigtails. It was a photo of her as a child. Her fingers moved faster than her brain. "Who are you?" she typed. Silence again. Jessica stared at the photo, the blood draining from her face. Her hands began to tremble, her pupils dilating. It couldn't be her mother. She would recognize her own mother. She'd always believed her mother had died in an accident. Otherwise, why would she have never come back for her? Maybe this was a friend of her mother's. If her mother had friends this wealthy, at least it meant she hadn't suffered too much before she was gone. For a moment, she wanted to take back her question, but it was too late. She didn't understand. Where had this person gotten the photo? She was terrified of the answer. She had been in a daze all day. She would rather it be a scam. She had waited too many years, been disappointed too many times. She preferred to keep her mother alive in her imagination than to face the truth. All the years of being yelled at, of struggling, of breaking down in private, it was all in the past. It wasn't so bad. She had survived. She had saved a screenshot of the news report about Leo's painting of her. It wasn't so bad. Looking at that painting, she felt she could face anything. No fear, no retreat, just moving forward. Because the girl in the painting was beautiful, brave, and strong. She wanted to be that person. It wasn't so bad, right?